Generally, you said feminism is
here's what actually happened.
The foundation of all knowledge.
Money. I'm really mad that
what difference does it make, right? What
Stop.
The deregulation of the industry is obviously going to cause more of that industry.
And to lubricate the trust connection between people until they have enough.
Yet we could still look at biological reality and determining who's a female, even if there are.
Why don't you denounce feminism the same way you're denouncing capitalism? If you don't...
For something to be objective, it needs to be verifiable. And you can't verify...
If I make a claim as a political pundit, it is true that I definitely could be wrong. That you're promoting, right?
Ideology is the main tenet of politics, right? This is my ideology.
So, 2015, anyone go back and watch the footage. The first GOP debate.
Cool, Robert. Oh, dead? With a crowbar, you said?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. I am Sarah, the Raging Tomato, bringing to you live another Mater Nation debate with Objective Ethics, Bones of Dune, Hunter Kozak, and of course, our fine friend Vybe. They are here to debate objective morality can exist without God through reason, evolution, or natural law. Objective Ethics, if you'd like to kick us off with your opening statement, please.
Thank you to everybody for participating tonight. Looking forward to a good one. All of our actions as agents are motivated by either reason and or emotion. Agency in the normative sense means setting goals and taking actions. The reason that we can identify normative claims for moral decisions is because we have a fundamental reason to cooperate with others, as we are a social species and because we have empathy. Our reason and our empathy are the grounds for obtaining true moral facts. Once the goal of cooperation is selected, there are true moral facts in how to obtain said goal. All true facts are objective. You cannot get an objective grounding for morality from any agent, as agents are never stance independent. God is an agent. The grounding for objective morality can only come from evolution, which is stance independent. If one denies nature as the ontological grounding for objective morality, then they must necessarily deny the existence of objective morality altogether. The normative claim for objective morality comes from the fundamental steps necessary to satisfy social contracts among social species, which we obtain via empathy and reason. I'm going to just talk a little bit about the is-ought because that gets brought up so many times in these conversations about morality. When it comes to the normative, how do you get the ought from the is? Many philosophers have already addressed this, that there's a misunderstanding with Hume's guillotine. It is not a universal principle that you cannot derive your ought from an is. In fact, most of our oughts ultimately do ground out an is at some point. For example, oxytocin is a hormone produced in the hypothalamus that regulates childbirth, lactation, and social bonding, while also influencing emotions and behavior. So, for example, if I want oxytocin, I have to play nice with others. I crave oxytocin as a part of my biological genetic makeup. This is literally causes my oughts. We can obtain this through logical arguments using the bridge. If bridge, a surgeon wants to perform a successful surgery, he ought to, normative, sterilize his surgical equipment. So there are several different ways that we can continue on with that throughout the debate tonight to kind of understand, using the hypothetical imperative, how we can obtain what our oughts ought to be based on what an is grounds out into an is. And I'll go ahead and give the rest of my time. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, OE. Bones, to you, please.
All right. So the resolution before us is not whether God exists, not whether like any particular ethical theory is correct. The question that comes off the prompt is, can objective morality exist without God through reason, evolution, or natural law? The position that objective ethics and I hold is yes. Notice that this is some type of existential claim. To affirm this, we need not prove that reason, evolution, or natural law provides an exhaustive account for morality, but rather we need only show that morality does not logically require God as its foundation, and that can be sourced from other areas. My opponents face two very different challenges today. My first opponent denies objective morality altogether, reducing moral claims to either like personal preference or some type of like emotivism, cultural convention, or some type of social agreement. This view cannot account for the distinction between moral disagreement and differences in taste. If morality is merely subjective, then statements like slavery is wrong or genocide is evil become expressions of disapproval rather than claims that could objectively be true or false. Moral progress then disappears, leaving only moral change. Even social contract theory fails to bridge this gap. Social contract may only explain why cooperation is advantageous or why societies create laws, but it cannot explain why an unjust contract is objectively wrong, why someone ought to honor the contract when violating its benefits them, or why societies that have endorsed slavery in the past or oppression in the past were either mistaken or were not mistaken rather than merely different. It only explains political order and not some type of objective moral obligation. My other opponent here grounds morality in God. While this view has a large philosophical tradition dating back to several centuries before, or rather several millennia before, it must answer a fundamental question, the Euthyphro dilemma. Are actions good because God commands them, or does God simply command them because they are good? If actions become good simply because God commands them, morality appears contingent on divine will. If God commands actions because they are already good, then goodness is logically prior to God's commands, and thus that just affirms our position. Appealing instead to God's nature relocates rather than resolves the problem, because we must still ask what makes God's nature morally good instead of merely describing it as such. There's also an issue of explanatory economy. Occam's razor tells us that we should not just multiply explanatory entities beyond necessity, God being one of these in this case. If objective moral truths can be grounded in the nature of reason, in the requirements of rational agency, or in other features of reality that do not depend on God, then positing God as an additional moral foundation is completely unnecessary unless it explains something that secular accounts simply cannot. Simply asserting that God grounds morality is not enough. One must show that God is an indispensable force for morality. Our position is a little bit more modest, I believe more philosophically defensible too. Just as there can be objective truths in fields like mathematics or logic that are discovered through reason rather than decreed by any person, objective moral truths can then exist independently of individual opinions or even divine commands from immortal beings. Evolution may explain why human beings developed the capacity to recognize moral truths. Natural law may describe the objective features of human flourishing, and reason may allow us to evaluate moral principles consistently and discover where judgments may succeed or fail. None of these explanations require God for objective morality to exist. Throughout this debate, we will argue that objective morality is best understood as something we discover through our rational inquiry, informed by our nature and our experience, rather than something that just depends on divine command or human preference. But we need not claim that humanity has already discovered the perfect moral framework, just as disagreement in science does not imply that there's an objective, or no objective rather, physical reality. Disagreement in ethics simply does not imply that there is no objective moral reality. The question before us is whether objective morality can exist without God. We contend that it can, and by the end of this debate, we believe that the evidence will show that is in favor of our position. Thank you.
Thank you, Bones. And Hunter, your opening statement, please.
Great. Yeah, so I'm going to be tackling this claim by arguing for subjective morality. So I'm going to define it as such. Moral truths are human-made constructs driven by evolutionary psychology or social conventions. I'm happy to fight on that definition as we argue. I will likely agree with my opponent's chain of logic. However, I think the huge amount of contention we will have will be on the axioms of the argument. An axiom, for the audience, is the starting point of any logical argument, and they are by definition unprovable because there is no argument justifying them. I think that my primary axiom might be something like, I want to live a healthy and happy life to the fullest extent possible. Now, it's relatively easy to derive modern ethics from this position. Rawls' veil of ignorance seems to imply that we should treat others with the expectations that we have for ourselves, so I should also give others access to a healthy and happy life. Anthropologists seem to assert that a happy society is one that appeals to liberal freedoms. I'm sure my opponents have an even more compelling track of logic than I have here. This is fully contingent on my axioms and social situation, however. There are two situations I'd like my opponents to engage with. The first, what if I don't want to have a happy and healthy life? I worked in a treatment center for 2 years. I've met some of the most depressed people you can imagine. There was a kid who had OCD to a frightening level and had an axiom that lives of any kind should be cared for. This seems reasonable, but hidden in this axiom is a strong opinion that the life of a cow and the life of a human were equivalent. He would often threaten to murder humans because we were engaging in a system that perpetuated animal suffering, and from a utilitarian calculus, he should kill as many humans as possible to prevent the slaughtering of cows and chickens. Many coworkers of mine refer to him as irrational, but this belief system is certainly rational. It is making the correct logical chains. And there was nothing that I could do to argue with him that he was wrong. There were no fallacies in this logic. My goal was to show him that he wanted to be happy for himself and to ultimately replace his axioms with something more nuanced. But that is all that can be hoped, because he had chosen different axioms than I had. I can't truly argue him out of this position. I would also ask about unfalsifiable claims in a myriad religions that are quite impossible to disprove. The second, what if the environment I'm in doesn't compel me to act kindly to those around me to access happiness and healthiness? We can easily imagine, hopefully, a human tribe that existed some 10,000 years ago. They're extremely localized and constantly fight with nearby hostile tribes that have recently immigrated into their area. Would it not make sense for this culture to adapt its seeing skin color, to prioritize tribalism and racism to the behest of their tribe's survival? I'm not advocating for racism. I would certainly say that it's unethical to be tribalistic, but I would. I was raised in the 21st century where we have found ourselves in a globalized arena and economy. We've been situated in a new evolutionary pocket, and we should adapt to the needs of our system. And so I wonder how we can argue that some things are bad if they are directly antithetical to the goals and axioms of individuals. Thank you that's the end of my intro. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Hunter. And Vybe, your opening statement, please.
All right, brilliant. So let's see. Tonight, the resolution is objective morality can exist without God through reason, evolution, or natural law. Great. Then I suppose, at least for a few minutes, we don't need to talk about God at all. No burning bushes, no thunder from heaven, no angels at the podium asking for cross-examination, which is fine by me. But here's the problem. The moment this argument tries to explain where objective morality actually comes from, God starts sneaking back into the room as a moral agent, because the claim is that morality can be grounded in reason, evolution, or natural law. But none of those by themselves can give us objective moral obligation. Reason is powerful, and I'm not against reason. I actually used some earlier this morning. So reason is a tool. It tells us how to get from A to B. It does not by itself tell us whether B is a hospital or a concentration camp. Reason can say, if you want a stable society, do not murder. Fine. But morality says something much stronger. Do not murder, even if it benefits you. Do not torture the innocent, even if your tribe votes for it. Do not do evil, even if you can get away with it. That is not just strategy. That is an obligation. Evolution has the same problem. Evolution can explain why humans develop sympathy, cooperation, parenting instincts, guilt, and social bonds. But evolution can also explain selfishness, domination, tribal violence, deception, and strong crushing the weak. So if morality comes from evolution, which part of evolution gets to be the judge? The part where Mother Nature protects her child? That's great. The part where one group wipes out another group just because it helps them survive? That's not so great. Evolution can explain behavior, but it does not turn behavior into moral law. Natural law has a similar issue. If nature has real purpose, order, and design, then natural law makes sense. But if nature is just blind matter bouncing around, as we mentioned before, the oxytocin, right? These are just chemicals in our brain, then we don't really have an objective morality or a meaningful subjective morality. In a sense, we might even have an irrelevant morality. Our moral beliefs become chemical weather, maybe interesting, maybe useful, but not finally true. Richard Carrier has an argument. He says morality is grounded in a rational agent. He says there is a necessary rational standard above human opinion, above culture, above personal preference, and binding on those rational beings. And here's what I think. That sounds a lot less like atheism and a lot more like God, with the label peeled right off. Carrier has not removed the need for an ultimate moral ground. He has just renamed it reason, and nobody checks. Now, I'm not arguing that atheists cannot be moral. Of course they can. Many are, many religious people are not. The question is not whether non-religious people can behave morally. The question is whether objective morality can be grounded without God at all. And I do not think reason, evolution, or blind nature can carry that weight. They give us preferences, they give us instincts, survival strategies, and social constructs, but none of those equal objective moral truth. So tonight, my argument is simple. Without God, morality may be useful, popular, emotional, or even practical, but it is not objective in the full sense. It's just human preference dressed up as something else.
Perfect. Thank you so much, gentlemen. And a kind reminder to the audience, everyone up here is streaming on their own platforms. Their labels are in the video description. If you'd like to head over, subscribe, like, share, and of course, as always, send them all of your money. Otherwise, we are going to get through our debate. Then we will move into closing statements. We will read and respond to your kind super chats. And then, of course, we will open up the panel for open panel Q&A. Gentlemen, I leave the floor to you.
Objective ethics. Do you want to go first, or I mean, after all, so
yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Jump in.
Okay. Okay. So I actually take issue with Vybe's statement that like God is somehow like the grounding for objective morality. How does what's your response to like Euthyphro's dilemma then?
Well, let's look at it this way, right? So we actually don't have to talk about God and whether it's objective or not. So if you are, let's just say you yourself, Bones, are a Christian and you believe in God, you know it in your heart, you would feel that that is objective. His rules are objectively true. However, if you were an atheist looking at him, you would say, well, I don't believe in that. Therefore, his objective truth is subjective to me, right? So I'm not even arguing that God's objective. I'm actually arguing that everything is subjective, depending on who's viewing it, right? So I think your view, I think the view from God, like depending on who's looking at it, it's all subjective.
So then I guess it just means you're kind of immediately conceding on the idea that God can instantiate some sort of objective truths about morality then, if his views are also subjective.
Here's the thing. The prompt is that objective morality can exist without God. Therefore, we don't even have to talk about God. In a sense, the prompt is almost conceding that that moral ethics exist, but if we remove him, then they still exist. So really what you guys are trying to prove is that we don't even need to talk about God, because we're actually just saying that objective morals exist no matter what. We can put God in there, we can take God out, no matter what, it exists. So what we're actually arguing against is that cannot be. Whether we have God or whether we don't have God, there are not objective morals.
Yeah, unfortunately, the prompt is also like implicitly arguing that God is a for, or rather God's like morals is a form of objective morality, which I feel like is incoherent for the earlier dilemma.
Well, I mean, you even actually mentioned before that in a scenario, if God is going off of the universal, right, objective morals, then he's just stealing from something that you guys are saying already exists with or without him, right? And of course, if you were to bring the God piece back into it and the theology, we would say that none of this existed. Therefore, those morals couldn't exist until God came. But once again, I am actually not arguing that the because which God are we going to talk about? The moral ethics of God are objective. I'm actually asking you to tell me how it can be objective without.
I mean, presumably, when you're referring to God, you're referring to the Christian God, right?
It's. I mean, each God has a different set of morals, right?
Right. But you yourself affirm like Christian morality, correct?
I myself am a Christian, but I don't think it really plays into this particular argument.
Right. But if there are no like objective ethics with God, then the only like other possibilities that we have to investigate the other frameworks outside of God. And I believe you already agree with this, correct?
Yeah, I mean, for you,
I believe you do too. If God's like properties are internally contradictory.
Yeah, I mean, basically, we just want to find out if moral ethics can be objective.
Right. But if God's ethics are grounded in objective morality, then the idea that like can objective morality exist without God is again, it's just presupposing that God is like a variant in which it grounds logic objectively, which is just incorrect, in my opinion. Or not even just in my opinion, but just logically speaking. I mean, either God is the grounding for all logic in which it's subjective because God has a mind, and something that's mind dependent is by definition subjective, or there is some form of objective morality that exists outside of God, and therefore we don't need God. and invoking God would just be an unnecessary commitment.
Yeah. So, I mean, me personally, as a Christian, I believe that God's morality is objective. However, for the point of this argument, I could actually concede that in your eyes, because you don't believe in my God, that in your eyes, my objective moral truth is subjective, right? That is something I can concede to. But once again, the burden is not on me to prove that my God's morality is objectively true. The burden is on you that without my God, your moral stance is objectively true.
I do agree that I think we're pushing the argument into a place that it doesn't necessarily belong, that the onus really isn't on Vybe to prove that his specific branch of ethics is objective to him. We're removing God from the situation because that's what the
ultimately then I guess Vybe is just going to be agreeing with the position then. If he can just concede that God doesn't hold the objective moral properties, then he would just be on our side then.
Wait, no, because I don't believe that without God, objectives are moral. I believe they're subjective. And Hunter actually did this in his opening, which I agree with, where he is basically, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Hunter, you're basically saying your argument is there is a subjective moral structure out there, but it is not objective. And that is, you guys are countering that.
I would take the affirmative claim that morality is subjective.
Yes.
I'm largely atheistic, so I would cede all ground on the Euthyphro dilemma, right? I would just refuse the premise.
So then I guess we can kind of just take this into a different direction. Wouldn't you agree that over time we seem to have kind of we're starting to converge on certain ideas of morality, for example, like slavery?
Yeah, certainly.
We could say that in the past we've had probably really atrocious views of slavery, where more societies were permissible for of allowing slavery, and nowadays we've kind of narrowed that to something that's less than that.
1 million,
for example.
Sorry,
go ahead.
I would. You can give your example if you want. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah. For example, one thing I like about the 13th Amendment and disagree with the 13th Amendment on is that. For one, we have narrowed the bounds by which people can be owned. The problem with the 13th Amendment is that the state themselves can still own slaves through the penal system, which I think is a moral bad. But it seems that we've kind of converged on disallowing slavery in other cases, and we're starting to kind of understand as a society that, hey, maybe this concept of slavery is really bad because rather we ought not treat other people as if they were property, but rather as human beings or rational agents deserving of moral value.
Yeah. I think moral progress is a very weird argument against objective morality. The example that I'm going to give, it's sort of similarly as if you're shining a flashlight in the dark, and you're saying, isn't it very, very interesting that the beam of light always seems to originate from me? Doesn't that seem to say something? And I'm like, well, necessarily so, right? If my viewpoint is from the current era, then I would, of course, look at all moral progress to where it has arrived, which is where I exist and situate myself in, and say, obviously, it has brought itself to this point because that's the point in which I live. Does that make sense?
Okay, if I could, let me see if I can understand this. So basically what you're saying is, because we're observing this phenomena at this point in time, we can compare it to a previous point in time and say that we're in a much better situation nowadays.
Yeah, I'm sure that if you ask a bunch of people from, whatever, the 1500s or whatever, and say, did we make moral progress? A lot of them would say no, because they're seeing it from their lens, not mine. And so if I'm seeing it from my lens, necessarily we're making moral progress because I'm situated into the environment and circumstances that I live in, and I look into the past and I see morals progressing into me. Does that make sense?
Yes. So I guess the symmetry breaker here would just be that there's this idea that morality itself is grounded in some sort of concept. I'm kind of back and forth on moral realism in both whether there are natural facts or whether there are non-natural facts, or even even like a constructivist view too could probably go about this, but it seems to be the case that over time these facts have kind of been revealed in a sense that either through like art discovery or through some sort of like just not just discovery, but rather like we've kind of reasoned ourselves to this that
if I could
like treat certain like cases to be the language is kind of like lacking right now.
I'm just gonna say like necessarily so, right? Like if I have the perspective of my era, I'm always going to say, I'm just going to repeat the same thing that I said before, but that I'm going to see any action that led to where I'm at and say that that's progress because I believe myself to be morally correct. I'm situated in the circumstances that I am currently living in. So it makes sense that of course moral progress has occurred. We would say that, but every single person would necessarily say that. But we might just be in a circle there. I have a different question to ask you because I think
go for it.
I think you've been asserting a lot these laws of logic and math. I think you said math has an objective basis, logic has an objective basis in your opinion. Is that fair? Yeah, I'm super confused about that one. Like what I mean, I could go through a couple different circumstances, but the laws of logic and the laws of math are very contentious and are a good example. I'll give an example. Like, is the Pythagorean theorem an objective truth?
Insofar as it is grounded in kind of the fundamentals of mathematics, yes, it just kind of follows through.
I'm
the
not
argumentation for it.
I'm not trying to just assert my knowledge of math over you, but
no, you're fine.
Non-Euclidean systems, wherein like the plane is like a globe, or the plane is like a hyperbolic sphere, or something like that. The Pythagorean theorem falls apart because you need Euclid's fifth postulate in order for it to hold, which is fully arbitrary. You can throw that in or throw it out depending on what system you're choosing. So
I would just argue then that that Pythagorean theorem is kind of incomplete in that sense that it only applies to a narrow set of cases where it reigns true. So in this case, it would just be Euclidean geometry.
Okay, so what truths could possibly exist independent of axioms?
I guess at the end of the day, my position would probably just be that you probably can't, though. I
think that's my position.
I don't know.
I think that's my position that there are no objective truths in mathematics. That really everything is going to be contingent on arbitrary axioms that you're choosing. When I say arbitrary,
I wouldn't say that they're arbitrary. I think
no. Sure. Let me clarify what I mean by arbitrary, because I sometimes whatever you can quibble on what I mean. I don't mean random. I do mean functional, and useful, but not necessarily true, because we look at specific systems, whatever we can look at, whether or not airline pilots are trying to find the shortest distance, or we're trying to look at land that's mostly a flat plane. We will choose different axioms based off of different systems and arrive at different truths. And that to me feels like it's fully contingent on the systems that we're engaging in, that there are no real true. They're just models that we throw onto the world and then find useful facts about. And then and I would say similar things about logic. I would say that the law of excluded middle is very, very contentious, and a lot of different logical systems don't use the law of excluded middle. They throw it out because it's largely pretty unhelpful for what they're trying to do. And that to me is really what an axiom is. It's their unjustified statements that you just choose to be true, and you just sort of assert that they're true, and then they're true within your system. And that to me is what subjective truth is. Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So I guess going off of that, then I guess the only other cases would just be looking at some sort of infinite regress that isn't vicious in a sense.
Sorry, I'm having an infinite regress. Is that what you're saying?
No. I guess the only other way that this could be grounded is some sort of an infinite regress that somehow isn't vicious or doesn't have any internal issues either.
Right, because are you like Munchausen's trilemma, right? That you can only have infinite regress. Yeah, and I would say that in the terms of math and logic, it's dogmatism. That's the answer to Munchausen's trilemma. You just assert shit to be true, and then you find stuff that stems from that. And like that first assertion that you first start saying does not have to be true. That's not necessarily true. It's something that you just kind of throw into the cosmos and you go, this is true. Now what? And then you can find out what happens next. But there is no there is no necessary qualities to those axioms. They are.
I guess, but isn't
arbitrary.
there still like a? I guess isn't there still like a fundamental fact of the matter that like even if we, I guess, take like a massive, for example, like a kilogram of some sort of like substance is like it really does exist, and the way that we express it is it probably like incomplete. In some ways, we kind of just arbitrarily
I'm gonna
discuss like mass in terms of some other property that we've determined to be sufficient. But,
I'm going to be super pedantic here, and I really apologize for it.
Yeah, no, go.
No,
Dude,
but
go,
like,
go for it.
I would
I'm,
say
like, super
we
interested.
take as an axiom that the shit that we see is true. That like, how do we genuinely not know we're brains in a vat? We don't. We take as an axiom. We're walking around and we're engaging in something that is real, in something that is meaningful. But that it's a completely unfalsifiable statement to say we're brains in a vat. There's a reason why. I don't know. I personally see any arguments to the contrary as unsatisfying. It is something that you just take as a given. To me, that to me feels like it flows from. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So I'm confused as to how is solipsism? How is running to solipsism useful for the conversation?
It's not.
It's
useful. I'm saying. Oh, sorry. I think I misunderstood what you were saying. Sorry.
Are you saying there's no objective reality?
No, not at all. I'm saying that we can't assert that there's an objective reality. We can't prove that there's an objective reality. I would say it's very possible that
we can't prove we're not brains in a vat. But how is that useful to a conversation about morality or whether or not I should go drive to the store and get something if I'm hungry or anything for that matter?
Well, I was using it as a metaphor for the conversation about ethics, that we really can't assert anything without dogmatism. So if you feel like it's irrelevant, that's fine. I can throw out solipsism. But I was just sort of saying that any sort of assertion that we're making, any sort of logical proof, has to bottom out somewhere. There has to be just there just has to be statements that you just throw out that are true. That are true to the system, if that makes sense. And I don't see how it could be any other way. That's what really confuses me about people who say things to the contrary. Do you understand my question? Like, how can you prove anything about objective ethics? Where do you begin? That's my question. Where do you begin?
So I think we began the grounding, and I think it's been touched on. You mentioned social progress, and so we can tie into that. So reason was brought up, right? And I know that the brother brought up Richard Carrier. Richard Carrier does have peer-reviewed work on that. 2025, I think he did a paper, but Richard Carrier is not the first and won't be the last person to cite reason as our ability to obtain true moral facts, right? We know that Ayn Rand with objectivism bases reason as the primary function in discovering objective morality. Mm-hmm. Aquinas, natural law theory, cites reason as the way to obtain that natural laws are discoverable. Kant, he again, rational morality. Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. Aristotle's ethics is built around the premise that people should achieve an excellent character by practicing virtue in order to ultimately attain well-being. It is sometimes referred to in comparison to later ethical theories known as character-based ethics. Like Plato and Socrates, Aristotle emphasized the importance of reason. I mean, I could go on and on and on and on. So we know.
No, but
so there's a number of heavy hitters. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, that feels kind of like appeal to authority. Of course, there's
I'm just saying, the argument is there. So if reason allows us to obtain these true moral facts, how does running to solipsism engage with the actual argument?
Well, okay. The reason why I'm asserting solipsism is because usually people say reason exists through nature, but I guess my question is, don't you have to assert that nature exists?
Yeah, are we not going to all accept the intelligibility? Or are we going to just concede the fact that yes, we could all, we all recognize the.
I just want to point out that it's largely arbitrary.
Philosophically of hard solipsism. It's called hard solipsism for a reason, right?
No. Totally.
So we can assert hard solipsism into any argument, but how does that get us anywhere?
I'm saying I would like us to acknowledge the fact that we are asserting this without true knowledge that it exists. That's all I'm saying. that like
Are
claims
you saying that it needs to be like certain in order for it to be true in this case? Which
those feel like synonyms to me. Certain and true. I don't.
So do you accept there has to be no fallibility in order to assert anything? It must be infallible in order to assert anything?
Sure. Clarify what you mean there.
Fallibility, I would consider.
No. Sorry, I know what fallibility means. What do you mean? I can't assert anything.
Well, it sounds to me, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, so please correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
It sounds to me that you're asserting that because we cannot be certain we're not brains in a vat, we cannot then have a discussion about objective morality or whether or not I should drive my car down to the store and not run people over on the way or anything else for that matter, right? Is that not what you're ultimately?
What I'm saying is that can just be our bottom. Our bottom can just our axiom, our foundational truth that is unjustifiable, that is improvable. It's not necessarily true at all. That's how I define an axiom, and maybe you guys can contend with that definition. But it is an unjustifiable fact that, it's an unjustifiable fact that we just sort of assert, even though we haven't proved it, that we exist, that solipsism is false.
Well, I think we can even build up objective morality from a solipsistic principle, because if we're going to build off of first principles, the first principle must be that nothing cannot exist, right? The second principle would then, of course, be hard solipsism, that something must exist because nothing cannot exist. So that thing that must exist must at least, at the very least, be me, that brain in the vat, right? And so because of the chemical responses that brain is experiencing, the ises, I would, in order to reduce my own internal suffering, I would want to envision myself getting along with all the other chemical people, the imaginary people that I'm putting into this universe that I am creating because I'm the only thing in existence. So for my own well-being as this brain in the vat, I still think we can build up a justification for moral actions, moral oughts. Why ought I do this? Because if I imagine touching if I imagine myself that when I touch the stove, it hurts, I ought to move my hand away from the stove. That logically follows. If I imagine that I'm receiving this oxytocin, right, because I get along with the imaginary people in my tribe, I ought to get along with the imaginary people in my tribe. And then we can justify further getting along with larger groups because we can expand the analogy, right? So if cooperation within a small group works and allows them to take over land or take over territory or sustain themselves into their own flourishing, we can make the argument that, you know what, if they actually cooperated with their neighbors instead of killing them, they would have even more success. Because like Sagan said, few working together can accomplish so much more than any large group of individuals can alone. So we know fundamentally that even if it's within our own brain, fundamentally at a fundamental level, this cooperation mechanism seems to work.
I think my issue with that argument is that it sort of necessarily implies that cooperation works. Like, what about in the circumstances in which competition works and cooperation sort of fails? And I'll give an example if you'd like, if you want to just sort of say that doesn't happen. I can run through that. I guess I'll just run through it. Sorry, that was a question.
Yeah, go ahead, run through it.
Okay, sorry. This is not a trick question. The second one's going to be a trick question. Is it unethical for me to abandon my children?
I would say yes.
We would say yes, right? It is unethical to abandon my children. Is it unethical for a turtle to abandon his children?
We don't make social contracts with turtles.
Right. Isn't that, but what?
So the normative
I wouldn't consider turtles more
the normative claim. The claim for the normative of what we ought do is based on a social contract that we have with other people, not with turtles.
Sure, but what about circumstances in which we don't have social contracts? Are you saying that? But okay, so
we do. We are social at a fundamental level. We're a social species.
Totally. So what about non-social species?
So
like, what if we could imagine an intelligent species that is not social? Would they not? Like, would they be able to independently arrive at our morals that we have?
So if I consider moral agents to be like beings of sufficient moral consideration. So depending on where you draw the line at consciousness,
sure,
it would just depend on whether I would draw
Can we just imagine some sort of territorial alien that we meet that's actually pretty damn intelligent, but also seemingly fairly aggressive because of the very specific circumstances that existed on their planet? I mean, I could come up with some hypothetical, but can we just imagine that maybe in some circumstances, some intelligent species would be able to be, it seems more right for their evolutionary gains to be more aggressive and to be less social, like other animals that we see? Or is that impossible? Is that necessarily
I'll be honest,
false?
I can't. I mean, I can try to engage with your hypotheticals, but I really only can speak knowingly about the social contracts that people engage in. Because when I hear people talk about what we ought to do or ought not do, it's relative to human beings what we ought to do within our own social contract.
It's relative,
I would
isn't
say that within biology, in the scope of biology, and I'm not a biologist,
sure,
but from what I understand is that there are many different types of social species, and within that own construct, they have their own social contracts. So the true facts, the objective true facts, are the steps that lead to the goal, right? And the goal is then found grounded in nature. So that's where you could ground it objectively in nature. And I want to also, before we get too far away from it, and I don't want to divert from this, but I do want to come back to the issue that was raised at the beginning, because I think it is relative. It seems like we've got two different fronts that we're facing here. We've got one front where you want to argue for subjective morality or moral anti-realism, and you've got another front and you want to completely avoid God, which is in the prompt itself. And then you've got another front where the person wants to set God off to the side because I think he realizes that we've demonstrated here that you cannot get objective morality from God. So I want to make sure we have a concession here before we get into objective morality anywhere else. Either objective morality does not exist, or you cannot get it from God. It must be grounded in nature. Because that's really was in my opening. It must be one of those two things for your position must be true. Either must be grounded in nature, or it just doesn't exist. And it sounds like you're saying,
are you saying there's a split between like the opponents, or are you saying I have a
because you're arguing, well, unless I'm missing something, it seems like you're arguing for moral anti-realism.
Yes.
And your partner is saying that, well, I don't want to say that objective morality can't exist, but I don't want to argue how God can ground it because that's not the prompt. But we're in agreement then that it has to be this dichotomy where it either God cannot ground it, or it must be grounded in nature, or it just does not exist, right?
Yeah, I mean, for the purpose of this argument, and I'm going to play dumb, right? I am putting myself in your shoes. So I am a secularist. I don't even know about God. I would love to know how I can know objectively what I am doing is right or wrong. And as the idiot in the room, I mean, kind of going back to everything everybody was talking about, we began with talking about things like moral progress. And we all, I think on this panel, agree we've made moral progress, right?
Yes.
But my first question as an idiot here is, how do we know we've made moral progress? Because I would assume, given the more facts, maybe we thought we made progress, but maybe we've made some steps backwards. And if we were given more knowledge as moral agents, and the more information we get, you guys are basically saying the more information I have and the less prejudice I have, the closer I get to objective truth. Would that be an incorrect statement?
I think moral progress can be measured by flourishing. And given the fact that there's 8.5 pushing 9 billion people on this planet in such a short period of time, relatively speaking, that we can say that moral progress we have, and we could look and see what factors have led to that, right? Like trying to end world hunger, trying to make a move towards renewable energies, so on and so forth.
Wouldn't that be from our own personal perspective, right? So I also would think that secularists also believe it's a huge universe. There's probably other life forms. And Hunter even said, like, let's say another species came. Now, maybe in their environments, their morals would be completely different than our morals, which is fine, right? They have their own moral agencies that know what the real moral objective truth is on their planet, because they wouldn't flourish unless they had different morals than we had, right? So now we have two different races in the universe with two different sets of morals, but then all of a sudden we discover they have this supercomputer that actually can calculate every single fact of the universe, and they actually can determine that the best outcome for the whole universe, for the most amount of species in the universe to survive, is actually the elimination of humanity. And it would have been better if our morals were set to go ahead and build nuclear weapons and blow ourselves up, which would have been the morally correct thing to do for the universe. Once we actually have all the knowledge, and we now, like, this is where I go, how do I know that my objective morals are true? I can say that they're true for my society, then I can grow, or my country. We can even look at past the histories, the cannibals on islands. They were eating people because they didn't have enough food, and if they take over, their warriors were stronger. It was ethically correct for them, for survival, as you said, to go there. So once again, I ask, like, isn't our moral progress only based on the amount of information we're capable of handling? And is humanity actually capable of being the actual moral agent?
So those are two really. Oh, I'm sorry, brother. Can I just? Those are two really good questions. The one thing I would say is that yes, moral progress does obtain as we advance and as our reason, as we continue to evolve and understand the world around us better. But that doesn't mean that there's no objectivity to it. So there was a time when most likely every single person walking on the planet thought the Earth was flat. We know now, with the advancements in science and technology, the Earth has never been flat. Just because people think something at one point and we progress in our knowledge doesn't change the true facts about the situation, right? Go ahead, partner.
And to kind of go off of that, it feels like that the computer in this situation is kind of backing off of like a utilitarian framework now. I feel like utilitarians who like affirm like moral realism in this case would say that they would probably just bite the bullet and say that absolutely, if it's the most moral in like this specific framework, that they ought to like end all human life as it is. But there are other. Would I? Probably not. So the reason why is that we're not kind of going off of, or at least my opponent and I are not going off of like a utilitarian calculus. Instead, there's some sort of moral principles here that are like universal. In this case, to start off with the alien invasion thing, if there are universalizable rational principles that prohibit something like domination or exploitation of other beings, then the aliens who try to conquer us would be just morally wrong, even if it does benefit them in that sense. And so, like, there's a reason for it in this case. Outside,
I'm gonna go back to something I said in the opening, because I didn't really get a satisfying answer to it, and I think it can situate itself in the conversation right here. The kid that I knew who was like, no, there's not moral progress because we're actually, the factory farming is at an unprecedented level. We're actually raping and abusing more cows and chickens than ever before, like by several orders of magnitude. Wouldn't that kid be right in a sense by saying that there's no moral progress based off of his specific framework?
No, because the framework that you're talking about, and veganism is a really empty claim. It's because it leads to a net negative. And I don't know if we want to debate veganism or abortion in this particular debate. We can go down those roads, absolutely.
Yeah, well, sure.
Want to touch, but when it comes to
I might
something
have a
like
different claim actually, but go ahead.
We're talking about factory farming versus killing animals. So we don't have to be a vegan to be against factory farming. So we have to really isolate, what is this kid talking about? It also seems to me that you told me, unless I misheard you, you told us that this kid had some kind of like neurodivergency.
Yeah.
So when we talk about reason and empathy, when we talk about reason and normative, we're talking about people with a healthy brain state. The average person, the normal person, what would they do? Not just some random psychopath.
These are such subjective claims, though.
And what is a normal brain state?
Right, exactly. Like, compared to what? Like, what are we comparing this to?
Now we basically have to come up with a new evolution of if we are to find our moral agents, we have to have some sort of brain test to figure out who's included, because all of humanity can't be included in that.
Because whenever we're trying to build up an objective framework and someone goes, well, I disagree because I have different claims than you, and you're like, these are universal, then you go, well, just not you, right?
No, they just
not these people. It's universal for everyone except for these people who disagree with us.
The morals hold up. The true facts hold up. The access to understanding them is it's going to be relative to each person's ability, mental faculties, right? So so we talked specifically a lot about like moral progress, whether you take it from the subjective view or the objective view. We all talked about empathy at some point, right? Empathy arises from a distributed network in the brain, with cognitive empathy linked to the prefrontal cortex and the temporoparietal junction, and emotional empathy rooted in the anterior insula, anterior cingulate cortex, and amygdala. We have measurable things that physical traits and properties that we can examine and determine what this person's access to normal or normative behavior is. We treat these conditions medically because we can identify them.
Of course we do. But only
so we can identify them
only because they're not situated well within the society's norms and society's
That's what normative means.
No, 100%. But I'm saying that it's relatively easy to just imagine humans as okay. How do I
After this exchange, I want to take it in a different direction with respect to veganism, because I actually think it's a little bit more of a compelling argument.
Okay, cool. I guess what I'm trying to say is here's my question. You're claiming that these are objective ethics, which anyone can essentially mind independent, be able to access. What if can I just play a character real quick? Where I'm
sorry. Can you did you say that I said anybody can access this? Because I specifically did not say that.
Sure. That's true. That's true. You did say that with
okay.
No one. Sorry, you did say that certain people cannot access this if they don't have the ability to like use logic or acquire knowledge. Is that fair? Is that a fair
reason being the fundamental?
Reason. Great.
And
cool.
Empathy and reason are the two fundamental points of the argument, where it's grounded objectively in human nature of reason and empathy. Yeah.
Okay. I guess my question is like, how do you even begin to tackle? Let's just say I'm a Christian nationalist who says slavery is right because it's in the Bible, it's right there, and also God will smite me if I don't follow it. How do you assert to this person that they're wrong?
Because there's an internal contradiction, for one thing. So when we look for logic, the argument. So when it comes to, for example, with slavery, how does subjective morality lead to logical contradictions? The slave owner needs his freedom and well-being to take slaves. Thus, he is demonstrating the intrinsic values of freedom and well-being. Therefore, it is a logical contradiction to say he is morally justified in taking away the same freedom and well-being which he necessarily values himself away from another person. He can do it, but he cannot justify it epistemically using his own standard of values.
Great.
The contradiction is within his own internal system of values because he's demonstrated this. It's not what he says, it's what he's demonstrating by taking slaves, by committing that action. This freedom and well-being is a necessary condition for any agent to act.
Right. The issue there is that you're assuming that he's betraying his own moral systems because he's inflicting it onto another person.
I'm not saying he's betraying his own moral system. I'm saying he's betraying his own value system.
Okay, great. No, he's not.
Well,
because he can just say, no, I'm part of God's chosen people. I'm one of the Canaanites, and I get to do this because God says so, and it says so in the Bible, and you're one of the bad people in the Bible, and I get to inflict my wrath upon you, and you don't get to me because God says so.
So Hunter, would God's chosen people argue that they have some like intrinsic value to like or some intrinsic like worth such that they deserve like well-being and happiness?
I don't think I need to answer that claim or answer that question. I think I can just say the Bible says so, and that is my law.
Well, yeah. If the Bible says so, then and that's what's informing their framework, then the answer is just yes. Then
that we're better inherently. Okay, sure.
Not that just you're better inherently, but that you have these like values or that you have this like moral worth.
Sure, that are antithetical to yours.
That not just that they're antithetical to ours, but it's just internally inconsistent. If they themselves feel like they have moral value, just because they feel that they're the chosen people, but at the same time they're not extending like the same moral value to like others.
Yes, because the Bible allows them to.
Hold on. In particular, I mean, the Israelites, they were allowed to hold their own people as slaves for like a given few years.
Okay.
And the Bible also states that you can beat your slaves near to death. But of course, we're going to say that that's wrong because you ought not, you don't want to be beaten. And that also would just violate your own well-being. So other Israelites who would also hypothetically get beaten in this scenario, it would also be violating their well-being.
You're asserting
that's where the internal contradiction happens.
Genuinely, this sounds really silly and pedantic, but like this is genuinely something I believe. You're inputting this law of non-contradiction that doesn't necessarily follow. What if they just accept non-contradiction? They just accept contradiction. They just say
it becomes self-refuting.
It doesn't, because they reject your logic system. They reject your specific framework on how you build systems. Because if you ever try to use any sort of logic system, it depends on which ones you use. You know, there's different kinds. There's the Thelian. There's it's been a while since I took in my logic class, but there's a bunch of different kinds. I forget the names. But like you can there are systems that accept the law of non-contradiction. There are plenty of logic systems that are internally consistent to do so. There are systems that reject the law of excluded middle. And you guys, because of your specific framework, accept these laws and you say they're universal, even though you just decry any system that doesn't use those.
To reject the law of logic, you'd have to demonstrate a P not P universe, and it's simply impossible. So the laws of logic are at a fundamental level.
It can rain, it cannot rain.
Identity.
P not P.
Right.
It can rain, it cannot rain. Those are both true right now.
You could say, what's that?
I'm saying it depends on the specific way we're organizing statements, we're organizing frameworks, and I could say that I can easily build a logic system that says it can rain and it cannot rain.
Not at the same time and place. Because
No, sorry. It might rain and it might not rain. That's a better way to.
So then, what does negation mean in this case if you affirm dialetheism?
I don't need to affirm like all of these. I guess
no.
The
concept of a negation just becomes like way weaker than than how we ordinarily understand it.
Sure, but sure, of course. But like any mathematical system or logical system can assert any sort of. How do I explain this?
But you're inferring an absence of identity by saying it might rain, it might not rain. Is now sidestepping the law of identity problem.
I know, right? But so you keep asserting these laws that don't necessarily have to exist.
Yeah, because they do. Because you cannot demonstrate, brother. You cannot demonstrate a P not P. You cannot say the sun both exists and does not exist in this universe. It either does or it does not.
Okay, I think that is some pretty autistic framework. I personally, sorry. I think the better lens to look at is mathematics, because that is I know it a little bit better. There are plenty of axioms that are rejected and accepted. The axiom of choice, very famously, can be accepted or rejected depending on what specific things you want to do. The axiom of infinity is an extremely contentious axiom that a lot of famous physicians wanted to not include in the laws of math. All of these things can be fought for and fought against based off of what we're trying to get. And that's the real, you guys are like, well, given this law, given this law, given this law, given this law. I'm like, well, sure. But who says these laws are necessarily true?
Yeah, and that's still kind of the part that confuses me. Well, because you keep on bringing up reason and empathy, right? So reason is a tool. Empathy is a feeling, right? And I don't understand where the authority comes from when you smash the two together. And if you could show to me, if you could present to me how authority comes from the authority of it, which would be the objective moral truth, comes from smashing reason and empathy together, I don't see where the obligation comes to follow that.
You're muted. Oh, you're muted. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Objective ethics.
Hopefully that'll be my first and last foofball here. Sorry about that, guys. Okay, so no, I think is that the. Hopefully I did. I wasn't talking the last 10 minutes to myself there.
No, just the last two.
Last few seconds. Okay, very good. So it seems strange that we're importing this this obligation, right? All these goals are going to be subjective. Whether or not we choose to participate is going to be subjective. Once we choose to participate, we have true facts that we can establish. So even with the mathematics example, once we establish that, once we agree to establish that a square, right, has 4 equal sides and 4 90-degree corners, then we can objectively say this criteria now, every time we see it, is in fact a square. If we subjectively say the first person to cross the finish line wins the race, then we can objectively establish that the fastest person who runs and gets across the finish line first is going to win the race.
I 100%.
Maybe
I feel like I'm going crazy.
Did you just say that once we all agree, subjective becomes objective? But as long as some of us disagree, then it's still subjective.
Well, we could disagree about whether moral facts exist. That doesn't get as to whether they do actually exist. That you could just be mistaken about a certain thing, or we could also be mistaken about a certain thing, and it could still be the case that objective moral facts exist. But actually, going back to Hunter real quick about the axiom of choice.
Okay, I'm going to get back to that though.
Yeah. I want to address this first.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
What are your thoughts about Zermelo Fraenkel set theory, and how that kind of how that attacks
So-
like the axiom of choice. I'm not like super familiar, but
So the Zermelo-Frankel, So the Zermelo-Frankel is so it's often ZF. Those are the like, I think they're like 8 axioms. You can throw in axiom of choice before or after, and it's gonna vastly change the decisions that you make. They're really famous like sets that will or won't exist based off of if you assert the axiom of choice. There are famous paradoxes that come across, like you can split a sphere into 2 separate spheres if you accept the axiom of choice, but it also makes proofs easier. So most mathematicians just accept it, but some mathematicians are like, this seems like it is creating some problems, so maybe this isn't the best choice, but it's not internally inconsistent, so there's no reason to turn back. I don't know if that answered your question.
Gotcha. So I mean, in this case, like the idea that we could like kind of put out these like apparent like contradictions, and suddenly this means that we can affirm like positions such as dialetheism, or sort of just any other system
Could you define dialetheism? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so basically a dialetheist is just anyone who asserts that the law of non-contradiction is false.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. I've definitely.
Yeah, so like, or
sorry.
anyone who like
I did
operates
know
under
that,
like
yeah.
a pair. Yeah, you're good. But anyone who operates under like a pair-consistent logical framework.
Right, exactly.
All I'm supposing here is that like maybe like rejecting this could just lead to like better ways to kind of frame logic, and that could just be a way of improving logic.
That's
such that you
that's
get a
exactly
more
my
robust
point.
theory.
Yes, 100%.
But wouldn't that mean that we're approaching some sort of like
no? It's that we're being more
logic?
useful. It's that we're being more useful because both like that's the thing is like ZF or ZFC. Both of them are true. Both of them are factual. There's no internal contradiction based off of the axioms that have been set up, but they get different answers, and some are more useful than others. And genuinely, ZFC tends to be more useful, which is why we use it. But then it also gives us weird conclusions. So we're like, I don't know if I like this one. Maybe we should go back to ZF.
I mean, even if some of the conclusions are unintuitive, I mean, we shouldn't just throw them out just because they're not.
I 100%
intuitive.
agree. Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Absolutely, which is why both systems are true. True in quotes, not capital T true, right? They're not facts, but they are to some degree true. They're internally consistent. If you accept those axioms, then those follow.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Interesting. I believe you had a question for me.
No, I had a question for objective ethics.
Oh yeah, go for it.
He said that the goals are subjectively chosen, which like maybe we can quibble about what that means, because that feels like my position. It feels like we both agree that the first person across the finish line doesn't need to be the winner. That we can have races where it's the slowest person who is moving forward is actually the winner. And I bet that there's races like that. I haven't checked, but I bet that literally those races exist.
That would definitely be a race that I could win.
Hell yeah. You have to be
Nice.
moving forward, but who can do it slowly? Yeah, that sounds fun. I would love to watch that. And we could imagine though, I would bet you $50 that has happened before. Isn't that my claim that these goals are subjectively chosen, and then once we have identified these positions, we can follow them into conclusions that are just dependent on the axioms that we've chosen?
Yeah, so I think we're having a disconnect in what is morality at this point, right? So I talked about normative, and it seemed like that was something that you weren't really able to address. What do we even mean by normative? What are morals? Morals are oughts. Oughts are not goals. Oughts are actions. What we ought do or ought not do. A goal is not an action. So the goal can be subjective. Once the goal is selected, you have actions that you take to reach said goal. So the goal would be something like cooperation. That's determined at a fundamental level in our genetic makeup because we're a social species. So if we accept this goal, we ought to act in a particular way to achieve that goal because we've accepted the goal.
Totally.
Right? And so we can expand that argument to, as I said before, our in-group grows. The larger, if we had global cooperation, we would not have world hunger. We wouldn't be shooting missiles at each other. There would be no such thing as slavery, no such thing as SA. I mean, every single thing that we think of as a moral argument would literally be solved with global cooperation, right?
I agree. Well, yeah, I tend to agree. the weird thing about your argument that is maybe throwing me for a loop, and maybe you could clarify what specifically you mean by this. Yeah, I agree with the normative claims. Let's give the example of is it the first person to pass the finish line or the last? I think we can both say that we can't just say that running fast is good, because it actually depends on the races that you're in. And there are those weird races where running fast is actually bad. It's the bad thing that you want to do. So it's fully contingent on what you want. And so those normative claims, like should I run fast? That's not something that we can just arrive at factually. Those aren't facts of the matter. Those are dependent on the systems that we're engaging in.
Yeah, normative claims are going to be goal dependent.
Am I crazy, or does that sound like a moral anti-realist position? Do you understand? Like, I don't. Like, I'm not trying to.
The moral anti-realist position. I mean, you could argue, you could define it as your position. My understanding of the moral anti-realist position is that there are no true moral facts.
Yeah. Just
right.
as
so,
if there
are true.
Just as in there are no normative claims.
There are true facts, though, once the goal is selected.
Yes,
so
once the goal is selected. In that, is running fast. Should you run fast a normative claim that is true? I would say no. I would say it depends on the system around you.
Well, at a biological... go ahead. I'm sorry.
Once we assert the specific organization or the specific environment that we're situated in, what kind of race are we running? Then we can start making those normative claims. I agree with you. But that environment that is situated in needs to be identified and is contingent on that environment. So I can move back 2,000 years ago and I can no longer make normative claims about that system because they're running a different race. They're talking about different things. The king's like, I don't fucking care if I live to see 80. I want to take over Spain. That's just what I want to do. And I don't know. Sorry, I don't know if I'm making sense here.
No, you are, brother. I'm picking up what you're putting down here. And I think that the issue is, once again, just because people thought in a particular way, set particular goals, doesn't mean those goals are justified once more information is acquired. When we acquire more information, we understand that our own well-being is based so much more on global cooperation, larger groups working together than small, isolated in-groups. In-groups allow us to other people, and it ultimately becomes self-defeating to our ultimate goal, which is peace, happiness, and well-being, flourishing.
You're assuming, like, let's say I go fucking talk to Napoleon and I'm like, yo, Napoleon, stop taking over all these areas. That's actually not leading to your function, because you should imagine yourself as those other people. And once you do so, you realize that you don't want to die. And he's like, fighting makes me feel good. Fighting makes me feel good. I want to keep fighting. Let me keep fighting. And that's the system that he exists in. He exists in a situation in which fighting makes him feel good. And whatever, that might not be true about Napoleon. I'm sure historians will.
This might be a contentious claim. Sorry, go ahead. I interrupted.
No. Go ahead.
This might be a contentious claim, but I don't even think you necessarily need like normativity to like guide like moral frameworks. I don't think you necessarily need a motivation to be able to do so. I mean, most people.
What do you mean with that?
Yeah, sorry. Most people would say that donating to charity is a good thing, right?
But that also you ought to donate to charity.
Yeah, but someone who like buys like a car for themselves, they're not donating to charity per se, so it's not always going to be like a motivating factor here. But in some cases where there's maybe like a sufficient, like I guess what's the word I'm looking for? There's like some threshold that's met in order to say to make that a motivation.
Yeah, the problem here for me is I feel like if you go talk to that person who bought, like who exists within my moral framework, right, is a moral agent that makes sense within our context. We assume he also thinks that donating plasma is good, or donating blood is good. I feel like if you ask him, hey, should you have done that? He's like, maybe I shouldn't have. Whatever, right? It's almost an acknowledgement that there could be better things he could have done, but just chose not to. And that like he's still comparing himself against a moral framework, right? But I would say that doesn't necessarily have to exist. So that's why.
But let's say that the car was necessary for them to be able to go to work. so that way they can produce an income and then make more money.
I 100% agree with you that I feel I feel like I go crazy because I'm like, that's subjective ethics right there.
Here's the crazy part. I think under a constructivist framework, these are kind of like these procedures kind of guide us towards like a moral imperative per se, and it leads us to believe that like there's a certain threshold given some reason that we ought to do something. And that's where like you get like you arrive at these kind of like objective moral principles or moral facts or whatnot, but you're still able to get like a motivation to do so. That's kind of absent other normal or
meta. I don't know. I'm this is a common argument, so I'm sure that you guys know your answer to this, but like it is a little confusing to me how you can argue for an objective ethics when it seems like there's a lot of contention on how to arrive at a lot of ethics. There's a lot of different ethical systems out there.
Right. And so it could just be that we're all mistaken, and that even though there are some like set of moral facts, we could all just be arriving at it the wrong way.
Let me throw this out there, right? The framework that you guys are laying out. I am not here. What I'm listening to my reason and my logic and the framework that you guys have set out sounds really good. I actually like this. And if you guys said, hey, here's our framework, we should be using reason, we should be using empathy, we should be doing this, this is how we move society forward, I would actually jump on that bandwagon. So I'm actually not saying your thought process is flawed. I like it. But what I am saying is I still feel like it's subjective. And that you guys feel like for it to be legitimate, you have to say it's subjective. I don't think it's subjective, but I think it's a legitimate subjective claim and worthy following. And I don't understand why you have this need to throw objectivity onto it. Ultimately, I think it's unknowable. I don't think humanity will ever, because you admitted, OE, that as more information comes up, then we have a better grounding. But I believe through all entirety of humanity, it'll never be known. And even if there is an actual ultimate thing, right? Something has to know what that is. Maybe it's not, us in the universe. Maybe it is us in the universe. Maybe it's not the longest part of the universe. Like, is the goal for the universe to last forever, or is the goal for everybody to be really happy for the shortest part of the universe? And who sets that goal, right, across all these different things? It's an unknowable, and that's in my opening. I said almost irrelevant morality. It's relevant to us. It's irrelevant to the universe. It doesn't have to be objective to be good. It can still be subjective and be good.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. And first of all, I'd just like to commend you on at least acknowledging that the benefit from striving to strive for this, right? Because there is a benefit both to self and to the group to strive for this. When you say it's subjective, my issue with that is that I literally laid it out as empathy and reason. So if you'll just bear with me here for a second, I've got the definition of how empathy fits into this. So just give me a minute to unpack this, or as I say, land this plane, right? Empathy is generally divided into two components, cognitive and emotional. Cognitive empathy, or theory of mind, is the ability to understand another person's perspective, beliefs, or intention. This relies on the medial prefrontal cortex, which interprets complex social situations, and the temporal parietal junction, which helps distinguish self-perspective from others' perspectives, enabling accurate social judgment. Emotional empathy, or affective empathy, is the capacity to share or resonate with another person's feelings. Key regions include the anterior insula, which generates visceral emotional experiences, and the anterior cingulate cortex, which processes the affective quality of pain. The amygdala also contributes by detecting and responding to emotional cues, particularly fear and distress. So what I'm getting at here with this is that we have an is that we're working with. Empathy isn't a subjective sense. It is literally grounded in something that is biological in our human.
I could argue that empathy is subjective, because when my parents died, I had a feeling, right? And I know when somebody else's parents die, I will say I'll be empathetic to that. However, the chemical reactions and the feelings that I actually had, where I'm saying I know what you're going through, is actually a false statement, because each brain and the way their chemicals are and the oxytocins and how it all works out together could be a completely different feeling. So really what I'm saying is I've dealt with that before. but I'm lying when I say I know how you're dealing with it, which is what empathy is. So the whole fact that that you're saying that we can be empathetic, I don't know if that's necessarily even true.
I want to tack on to what
Vybe
is saying, because I 100% agree, and I just want to strengthen his argument if I could. Yeah, empathy can absolutely lead us astray. There are a lot of circumstances, like he said, where someone's like, well, I would want no one to talk to me. I would want to go sit in a corner. And then, that's actually not true for other people. There's a lot of different circumstances that can exist for other individuals. But the other thing that I also want to focus on as well is choosing empathy as your biological factor that is guiding your philosophy is in some ways, and I'm really going to apologize because I don't know if there's a better word for this, is somewhat arbitrary. Because I could also point to very biological truths that are going on in my head that go, when I'm mad, I want to punch a wall and I want to punch people and I want to fight them and start breaking dishes. And sure, I have empathy stopping me, but I could also say that, you can flip it and say that, well, empathy is good and the urge to fighting is stopping me, right? Like these are all in contention with each other in our heads, and choosing which side wins out, because like everything that is happening is biological. It's all a fight. Sorry, the third thing that I really want to say, this is going to be really quick. I also agree that this is a good system, that this is one that I also abide by because I find it useful. This is my subjective reality. That's all I'm arguing. I think that we would all agree on the ethical, on the oughts that we ought to do in society. And I like anytime that you would assert something, I would agree with it.
Well, I just, in response, so this is why we combine empathy and reason, right? Empathy doesn't mean I know exactly how you're feeling. Empathy gives us a baseline that we can recognize and identify pain and suffering in another human being, right? But because of our own lived experiences, there's going to be certain differences to this. But what we recognize is a common aversion to suffering, a common aversion to sadness, a common aversion to physical pain, so on and so forth. We can also measure these things neurologically, which is, again, what I said earlier, is that we actually have in neuroscience and in psychology an ability to detect people that lack these abilities. They do not possess the ability to apparently obtain empathy. They also don't necessarily, there are people who don't possess the ability to obtain rational thought or rational thinking. So we could see that there are gradients to this, but that does not demonstrate that it does not exist at a biological level. And anything that exists at a biological level is in fact independent of any stance. It works chemically. Chemically is unguided as far as minds go, right? It's not a mentally guided process. It's stance independent.
Sure. It feels very weird to call like stuff like empathy or oxytocin or whatever neurochemicals that we're referring to as mind independent. Like they're also like, are they mind independent or are they the mind?
This is what I just said in my opening statement too. Like it's a chemical soup, right? That we're talking about in our brains, and each person with their glands and things like that are generating different amounts, which actually equate to what their decision making is. Like even like with Rawls Vale, where you're supposed to like remove yourself from everything and not know where you're going in society. Some people's chemical soup are going to still say, I want the rich to succeed, and I'm going to gamble because that's my nature, that's my chemical soup makeup on, I hope I win and I'm born in the rich race because I rigged it for the rich, even if I'm willing to take the chance. Other people will be like, well, it needs to be fair. I don't know where I'm going to end up. I'm the safety guy because my chemical soup says I'm safe. These are still subjective based on the chemical soup.
Yeah, I'm not trying to be unfair here, so correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels like you're trying to put the cart before the horse by saying that because these chemical processes affect our subjective intuitions, that now these chemicals themselves are subjective. I'm saying the chemical processes are in fact objective. They are stance independent. They are what produce the effect of us taking a particular stance, but that stance is not random. It's affected by something intentional. It's something physical, which we say the biochemical, the neurological processes.
Sure. I mean, I'm just going to go back to could you answer my question, which couldn't I point to other, I guess you said we have reason to facilitate like anger as opposed to empathy. That's why we're choosing empathy is through reason. Because there's a lot of different biological factors that we could choose, right?
Sure, absolutely.
There's a lot of different emotions, right?
Right. And we must employ reason. Reason is, as you mentioned, Carrier. I mentioned Socrates, Plato, Kant, Aquinas. I mean, Ayn Rand. Right.
You
Reason
mentioned more
is
than
the
me.
fundamental.
That makes him better.
Yeah, I would say reason is the fundamental principle that we must apply. But empathy is at the core of the biology. The reason we actually do these things is because it affects us personally at a personal levels.
Yeah, but so does all of the other emotions. Like horniness also affects me on a personal level. It makes me feel good. So I should just indulge as much as I want. Like
as long as you recognize that you wouldn't want to be violated without consent. So
obviously,
you can do whatever you want with any other consenting adult. I'm all for it, brother. But it becomes a question of, okay, so are you now saying that because a person is horny, that then justifies them just violating people all over the place like a bunch of bonobos?
I never said anything about violation. Okay, I'm
sorry. I read into your. That's my fault.
No. Sorry, no. That's fine. That's fine. I'm saying, can't I just invent an ethical system where I have sex all the time, and that is what I'm, and not non-consensually. Okay, I'm very good with my consent, and that's all I'm fucking doing. Is just having sex constantly. And I'm going, it's a biological process. It's objective. Actually, I don't know the specific neurochemicals that exist there, but like, you're like, well, it hits those neurotransmitters. So it's clearly objectively good that I'm doing this. And instead of like taking care of my community or taking care of my family, it's like sex all the time. It feels good. That's an objective truth because it's the chemicals in my brain say so.
So if you spend all day, I'm sorry.
My bad. No. It was your question in the first place. I'll respond after.
If you spend all day humping, right, and then you're not building hospitals, you're not building bridges, you're not building, community centers and so on and so forth. So eventually your society will fail because your flourishing is definitely affected. You're going to have a good time, but you're spreading STDs that you guys can't address because you're not investing the appropriate amount of time into the medical system, so on and so forth. So
first off, I want to be clear before I say this. I agree with you. Okay. But I'm just saying, you can, and I want to make sure, just
really quick, I want to make sure I keep saying you, and I'm not meaning you personally.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I think you're chill. Don't worry.
I'm talking to you, but like not you.
No. Yeah, and it's like, yeah, super fair. But I'm just saying, can't we just imagine a person? I think this is a very easy person to imagine who's just like, yeah, I would just live for a short time, and it would be so much better. I would so much rather enjoy myself for 30 years rather than not really enjoy myself for 70. It's the reason why people eat junk food all day. It's like, yeah, I actually weighed the consequences, and I recognize that I would rather live 2 years shorter if it means I get to eat Oreos. And that's like,
but what one would argue that it's not really like flourishing though. It's pleasurable. I grant that like it.
I agree with you, but who are you to say? Because I would say I'm me to say, and I would say it's bad because you're not flourishing, and I'm
because you're not.
But then I listen
because
to some
you're
people,
not really respecting your right to, in this case, to like well-being. It doesn't actually contribute to well-being.
Your definition of well-being. My definition.
No, not even just that, but eating Oreos all day, mind you, does not. It's not good for the body. It quite literally just like all that. It's just sugar and carbs at the end of the day.
However, in Hunter's case, the sugar and carbs and the happiness that it gives him when he's building the hospitals, he builds an extra story because he's so happy in life. However, when he's not eating them, he's so depressed. He does it brick by brick, and it takes him 2 years to build a single story, right? And for each person, this is going to vary, right? I mean, ultimately. And once again, neither Hunter and I are saying you guys have a bad framework. We're just both saying it's not objective.
I think I feel like shit when I eat junk food for dinner. I've done it before and it's miserable. And I'm like, why did I do that? It felt good in the short term and it feels terrible in the long term. I'm not going to do this again because that's my framework. But I also meet people who are like, I don't know, more overweight than me, who are like, it doesn't make me feel bad. And it low-key, like, I'll just keep doing it because it makes me feel good. And I'm still able to work. I still go to work and I'm able to complete my duties. So I feel okay about myself, but I
feel like the moral system you're trying to like put onto us is like some form of motivism, which I don't think either me or my opponent really like agree to. It's not like we're not saying like boo junk food in this case. It's more so that it's just like not respecting.
The specific claim that I'm making isn't that also just a neurotransmitter in the brain, and what makes it more objective or more better? Like, why are we asserting empathy over gluttonousness?
Because of reason. So we know that because of reason that the short-term gratification of
We
eating
don't know
all the
that.
candy,
That's how it is for you.
and if you don't have the ability to reason, then again, it falls back onto the cognitive limitations of the individual, because we do know because of science and because of like dentistry that a person who eats a bunch of junk food all the time, their teeth are going to fall out. They are going to suffer. They're going to have a lot of pain in their face. They're going to do it. It's self-imposed misery. And so because we understand this, we combine these chemicals in such a way, we recognize and identify what ultimately leads to our best life. Our best lived life is going to be in balance.
This feels very fallacious, because you're saying overconsumption of whatever, the feel good when eat neurochemical is bad. But I would also say overconsumption of the empathy neurotransmitter is also bad. Aristotle, or I think it was Socrates, who famously said that an ethical system in which you're so empathetic that you actually just give away all your belongings is bad too.
I think virtue ethics has like a really good response to this, and it's that like all these virtues that are being held are supposed to be held in moderation. If there's like too much or too little of a specific virtue in this case, then you're going to have some level of unfulfillment.
Great, that's a perfect
like
response, and that's a response to what I'm saying. Okay, cool. So let's have some balance.
Yeah, but also like virtue ethics is this is a like normative framework that's objective.
It's a normative framework. I agree with you that it's a normative framework. But I guess what I'm saying is, and I keep coming back to, I don't know if you guys are really understanding my question. You keep saying, well, empathy is in the brain and it's objective. So thus following it is objectively good. But also, aren't there a bunch of other shit that you can make the exact same claims for? Like, it feels good when I eat. We can ignore overconsumption because we agree we should be moderate. Okay, great. So it's ethically good. It's objectively ethically good under your framework to eat Oreos. Didn't I just arrive at with the same logic that you got to from objective ethics?
I think
does that make sense?
I feel like the disconnect is I don't think either objective ethics or I are actually saying that by I guess addressing this, how do I explain it? By like indulging in the like empathy neurotransmitters that you're necessarily going to be like increasing or like more moral in this case. Like I said earlier, in like a virtue ethics framework, as long as you're moderating these types of virtues in such a way where it's just maximizing overall, like in this case, it would just be well-being or some sort of like virtues, then you as a moral agent are satisfied in that sense.
But you're saying that our ethical system is grounded in objective reality because we can trace it to neurochemicals.
Well, yeah, it's natural
in nature.
Yeah,
right,
it's a naturalistic framework.
And I'm saying I'm going to use the exact same premises that you used, except for I'm going to switch one out and say, rather than empathy, we're going to talk about just pursuing dopamine. Isn't that also a neurotransmitter? Isn't that also okay in moderation?
Yeah. So this. Yeah, go ahead.
And then I can just be a hedonist, and then that's objectively correct given the same exact framework that you set up.
So I believe you're leaving out the moderation part.
I'm
obviously,
not.
So obviously, if you're over-consuming in dopamine, you're not actually like living a fulfilling life.
Great. Okay, so let's just pursue dopamine to moderation. But that's all I'm doing.
Then if you're pursuing to like moderation, then
that's objectively
you
correct.
You escape hedonism. Yeah, you escape hedonism in this case.
So that's objectively good to just.
If you're moderating your neurotransmitters such that you are practicing all of your virtues in a like perfectly moderate way, then yeah.
Okay.
Can I just hammer down a couple things? You mentioned about a few minutes ago, you said that the argument felt fallacious, but I never heard you tell me which fallacy it actually was. And I do recognize it seems like, and as far as fallacies, because I feel like you're kind of strawmanning the position by continuing to leave out reason when that's a core part of the argument. You're saying that the empathy, the chemicals, we can overindulge, we can just focus on this, but you're continuously leaving out reason, which is where this moderation is coming from. The idea of moderation comes from the fact that we use reason to determine what is the negative consequence of overindulgence of anything that we would otherwise say good. The other thing is we've already established, as far as I know, that these goals are going to be subjective, right? You're going to determine these goals subjectively. Once you subjectively determine the goal, then you can obtain the true facts that it requires the steps necessary to achieve that said goal. And those goals, why would we obtain these goals? Why would we want to cooperate? Again, that gets down to a objective grounding in oxytocin, for example. Right? Cooperation. When we cooperate with each other, we get a hit. We also survive longer. Our quality of life is significantly better.
So you asked 2 questions, and I want to answer both of them. The first, I'm unfortunately going to plead ignorance. I don't remember what I said was specifically fallacious. So if you remember what it was that I was saying that, I would be happy to clarify what I meant. So I'm going to skip that for now. And if I say it again, please pause me and then I'll clarify what I mean, what I think is fallacious. So I apologize for forgetting. The second is that I keep forgetting about reason. And I don't think I am. I don't think I'm strawmanning you, because I think I'm using the same logic flow that you're using. I think I'm saying, okay, moderation is good. I'm also going to be using reason to piece together these arguments. Eating Oreos feels really good. Eating Oreos, I shouldn't eat so much that I get a heart attack. Okay, I'll be a little bit careful. I'm going to eat Oreos and it's going to make me feel good. Okay, great. This is now objectively ethical that I ate Oreos. That to me feels crazy. Is that not the same logic flow that you used? Because the it feels good when I eat Oreos is a biological transmitter. It's something that's going on in the brain. In the same exact way that empathy, I'm just swapping out empathy and I'm putting in.
But this seems like a what would it be? It's a I'm so sorry, I just forgot the term. So the eating Oreos, it doesn't follow that this is part of a social contract. I'm confused as to how this is even a conversation when it comes to what we consider normative and the whole conversation about ethics.
Well,
it's about whether or not something that you value is good for a particular situation. How is that relative to a social contract?
So I would
behave with other people.
I would agree with you that it's not really a social contract. I was just going off of your premises, which were reason and empathy, and social contractness didn't really have anything to do with that. So now that you're asserting a third thing, it again feels a little bit ad hoc how many things we're adding into the situation. You go, well, it's different here. Well, it's different here. It's different here. And this doesn't feel as reasonable as maybe I guess what I'm saying is, I feel like objective claims, if we're making statements about objective ethics, it seems like what we should probably expect from those systems is that they can be independently arrived. And I feel really confused how anyone can create the same sort of track that you're making without just following you. I don't know if that made sense.
So sorry, the phrase I was looking for was malformed. I felt it was malformed. Then you said it's ad hoc. I'm just piling on criteria. But if you remember in my opening argument and what I've been arguing for this whole time, for the last, frankly, hour and a half, the normative claim for objective morality comes from the fundamental steps necessary to satisfy social contracts among social species, which we obtain via empathy and reason.
But is there anything?
Okay. Sorry, you can go ahead. I've been talking a lot, Vybe.
I don't understand though how that becomes all of a sudden objective, right? Like we came through this through reason. You keep on saying, when we come to an agreement, like that cooperation is good. Now we've got a framework and we can say this is good. That's a fact because we subjectively said we agree cooperation is good. And now that we have subjectively agreed on that, we come up with an objective fact on how to make that happen. Therefore, this is now objective morality. Our axiom is subjective. It can't just turn objective. This is the part where I'm just lost. This is where I keep on failing. Like I keep on wanting to hear you say, well, it's very easy. 1 + 1 = 2. Like just show me that train and I'll be like, oh my God, it is objective. But I haven't heard anything because there's always something that's subjective in there messing the whole thing up. And that's where I get lost in the framework.
So the definition for objective comes from 2 places. You can say stance independent or based on true facts. Are we in agreement with that?
Okay.
I'm fine with that.
So if it's based on true facts, we can subjectively say, for example, hypothetically here, a square has 4 equal sides, right? 4 90-degree corners. So now it becomes objectively true that a square cannot be a circle. A circle has no sides whatsoever, no equal sides, no 90-degree corner. So we can say a square cannot be a circle. Objectively true, because subjectively,
I'm already going to disagree. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry.
Well, you said you're going to throw out logic. Is that why you're disagreeing, or do you think squares don't have 4 equal sides?
Well, for one, how do I say this without sounding so pretentious? Couldn't I say, like, all you did was assert a definition, but those definitions sort of have to be just sort of accepted and also just sort of asserted dogmatically. Like, couldn't I say a glip-glorp is something that is I don't know. I could just make up definitions and start and just say that it's true that this can't be this. What if
you can make up any definition you want. Language is completely fluid. So why don't you give me your definition of objective and see if we can come to an agreement for the purpose of having a fluid conversation?
You're misunderstanding. I'm saying the assertion that a square is something with 4 sides is already a subjective claim. It's already something that you are simply dogmatically asserting. It's a definition. You're simply just claiming what a definition is. And in fact, there have been multiple different definitions of lines and have been heavily contested. I don't know if Euclid's definition of a line is not really in vogue anymore. And they kind of came up with new definitions of lines that are far more arbitrary and far more that are far less restrictive. Like I can say that a square is actually something with 4 right angles, and you might say, well, those are the same thing. Only in Euclidean spaces. Actually, like I can fucking reorganize this into any way that I choose, and what comes out is just going to be something that might be useful. It's not necessarily true. And that's my spiel. Sorry. I hope you're not frustrated with me. He looks frustrated, doesn't he?
Myself?
Yeah.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Okay,
I mean, I'm a little at a loss because I feel like we are just going around and around in a circle here.
Yeah, I was actually going to come in and ask if you guys wanted to move into closing statements, and then we can maneuver into open panel Q&A, and that way we can maybe bring some new voices into the conversation. This has been number one. I want Oreos now. I hate all of you. Okay, I've been sitting here since somebody said
ought to get some Oreos after this.
Yes, it's morally necessary, actually.
Exactly.
Yeah. But since somebody said Oreos and then you guys kept saying it too, so it's just killing me. And I'm like, dear God, I just want some Oreo cookies now.
I wonder if we cause some like very small spike in the purchasing of Oreos.
Yeah, we should be sponsored by Oreos.
Can we all agree that it's objectively better to have double stuff Oreos? Can we at least
yes.
Here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
People who prefer normal ones are weird. I'm like, I buy. Yeah.
The best part is the cream, unfortunately.
I don't mean to be the odd man out, but I hate Oreos. I don't understand the attraction.
We're
all right, well, look.
The fuck out of here.
Uh-oh.
I love you, Vybe.
Yeah,
bro. Right. Well, let's go ahead, gentlemen. I might have
before we move into closing statements, I do have I want to re-explore the like veganism thing. So I actually think it's a little bit more of a interesting like I guess moral dilemma than my partner here. Not to throw him under the bus, but I think veganism is actually an example of us kind of expanding the like concept of moral agents in general, and asking the question if non-humans are capable, but also like applicable when it comes to kind of defining like morality, in a sense. And I think where I agree with vegans actually is that there is a like threshold to where we ought to consider like animals to be moral beings, and thus we ought to respect them and coincidentally like reduce their suffering as unnecessary as it is. And to kind of answer like one of the core questions about the I guess whatever Kozak's was it like a person that you like
worked with? I worked
with. Okay,
treatment center for like disadvantaged youths or like
gotcha.
Basically, people who just can't function in real life are
right. So my contention,
it was a psychiatric facility, basically. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So my contention with the idea that we ought just like unalive or kill humans to reduce animal suffering is that that's one solution. but there's probably a better way that reduces overall animal suffering. For one, transitioning away from factory farming to something like 3D printing the meat and other animal products. That is a method by which you can reduce animal suffering without killing humans. Other options include just completely shutting down factory farming.
How far would you take that, just out of curiosity? So we reduce, now we're not farming the animals, but we've got the wild animals, which are doing harm. Like, we're the moral agents, right? Obviously, we don't have a contract with them, but if we want to reduce suffering for all life forms, right, now we need to go to Africa and, like, we still want them to be wild because we want the best outcome from them, but we need to fence them off from their prey, and then we need to start feeding them, ultimate meat, so that they, aren't killing. Would we take it that far?
So I'm actually a bit unsure about this. I've talked with a good amount of
check your objective. You've got a little book right there, and it says here are what the ethics are, and then you can check them.
So to answer this, not having epistemic access to the correct answer doesn't mean that the correct answer doesn't exist.
I know.
But funnily enough, checking like page 77 of the Bones of Doom objective ethics framework here tells me that there's some sort of boundary by which we consider the sentience of any being, and that cutoff could determine whether we ought to respect them or otherwise. As far as the range of vegan claims I've seen, there's a lot of vegans who would argue that we ought to kill all of the animals that were factory farmed, because the genetic modifications, antibiotics, all that stuff otherwise is actually contributing to a lot of suffering that if we allow the cows to just kind of roam free would just perpetuate suffering anyways. I actually find that somewhat compelling, but extending that to, say, like other animals, the most I'd probably go with, honestly, I think a common one would be mosquitoes, actually. Everybody hates mosquitoes. They don't really contribute much to the overall ecosystem. They're kind of like a plague.
Well, they are very good at spreading disease. They're the incubators for disease. If we get rid of, and that is actually then killing out a life form, right? So how far down the life form chain do we want to go?
So I put to answer Vybe real quick, I put the line at like a sufficient sentience. Insects, I feel clearly don't exhibit that. They may have like a pain response, but a pain response in of itself is not sufficient. And also they just contribute to like magnitudes of additional harm that is not necessary. And other insect populations could fill in that gap for any of the any of their predators, basically. And those predators would survive as well.
And maybe this is all going to be good for like the open panel, because there's also lots of things we could in this objective ethics that we could talk about, or objective morality that we could talk about to see how well they actually line up with your own personal worldviews, right? Like when we talk about abortion and when we talk about homosexuality and things like that, how does that line up with the objective morals if the goal is for creating society? And I'm kind of curious about that, but I'll leave it back to you, Sarah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right. Well, I think we're all agreeable to close out this debate. So actually, I will hand it back to you, Vybe, for your closing statement, please.
Oh, me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sorry. So, as I said before, and I pretty much knew it was going to go this way, or I felt like it was going to go this way. I'm an idiot. I'm a layman. I just needed some nice, concrete, objective evidence for objective morality. I felt like them coming into this was going to be the same debate I have all the time when I'm trying to prove God. It's basically unfalsifiable, right? I knew you guys were going to have a hard time, just because I have this fight all the time, but I'm on your side just with a different framework, right? But once again, like if I were not a Christian, the way that you guys are going about things and the way that you're looking at how we come to some sort of subjective morality, I think it's a great framework, right? I like the ideas. I'm not saying it's bad or anything, but once again, the moral agent, if I were to concede at all, the moral agent could not be us. I don't think our brains will ever be capable of absorbing all the information to come up with the actual objective truths. I don't think humanity has that capability without a computer or without some other type of being Ultimately, I think we pretty much showed that you've got a great subjective morality view. I don't know why it has to be part of the objective crew for you guys to feel like it's good. It doesn't have to be objective, but you just couldn't show it was objective. So that's just an L.
All right. Thank you so much, Vybe. And Hunter, to you, please.
Yeah, I actually really liked what Vybe just said, and I haven't really thought about it in that way. Where like if you accept that lizards, for example, aren't moral agents because their brains aren't big enough to really understand the implications of ethical nature, couldn't we make the same claim about humans? Because we're clearly going off in a whole bunch of different directions. There are so many different ethical frameworks, and it's clear that a lot of these people must be getting it wrong. If there are moral facts, then actually 99% of human beings are getting it wrong. And yeah, we might be approaching a truth, but yeah, we might not be moral agents at all. The last thing that I'll say is, yeah, I think that Occam's razor is kind of on my side. I think that most moral systems can sort of be explained by environmental factors or by evolutionary psychology or things of the sort. And we don't really need moral facts to exist while still asserting sort of these objective truths. This is really something that I really like that Vybe said, that it seems like we just don't like subjective because it seems like it's not binding. It seems like it's not important. And so we throw the word objective in there to go, no, this matters. And I actually think subjectivity really matters. I really think so. Thanks for having me, Sarah. It's always fun coming on here. I really appreciate my opponents too. They were very nice and kind, even if they were a little dumb. I'm just joking. I'm just joking. They were very intelligent, and I appreciate both of you guys. Bye.
I definitely will say this was a really great conversation and even a debate at that. But I didn't have to yell at anybody, especially Bones. I didn't have to tell him to shut the fuck up or anything like that. So shout out to you, Bones. But yes, Bones, with your closing statement, please, sir.
Yeah, so I feel like we had a really productive conversation about whether moral realism can in fact exist outside of a God framework. It seems like in the beginning we kind of just conceded that like maybe God doesn't seem to have much of a hand per se in whether objectivity can be achieved under that framework. So then we kind of pivoted off to the objective frameworks here. I kind of more danced around per se on a lot of the potential objective frameworks for moral realism, and I feel like that although my opponents substantiated some type of critique, I feel like a lot of them are kind of incomplete. In particular, the biggest issue I still have is the idea that just because you're kind of producing chemicals in the brain that somehow it is objective. I don't feel like that was what me or objective ethics was necessarily trying to claim. And I feel like that if we just impose this concept of moderation as found in virtue ethics, that it kind of solves this idea. But of course, me personally, I am still very much dabbling in more moral realism. I'm still kind of trying to feel the waters with respect to which framework is correct. So this is a really good opportunity for me to test some of those ideas out. And then I'll end this off on a pun. What is a love story contained within my mind? My Chemical Romance. For all the emos out there.
Fair enough. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Bones. And OE, final thoughts from you, sir.
Yeah, I think it was really telling when our opponents want to throw God out of the argument entirely. They were not willing to engage with God whatsoever, and God specifically is in the prompt. Our opponents want to hide behind hard solipsism, which I feel is kind of like trying to throw in the towel automatically at the beginning. And I think we dealt with the hard solipsism really, really effectively by demonstrating that even if I was just a brain in a vat, I can still be motivated within my own framework to act morally based on true moral facts. Our opponents wanted to throw out logic, in inferring that logic doesn't exist. I mean, these are some really, really desperate attempts to try to run away from the actual argument, in my opinion. I think there was concession that objective morality could exist. The claim that it wasn't demonstrated, I don't know if that's obviously going to be the brother's opinion. To say that 99% of people are getting it wrong is really interesting, because I'm wondering how do you even get that number? And when we talk about subjective morality being binding, what binds it? That would be the question I'd like to see answered maybe later. But I do want to thank everybody. It was very respectful, well fought. I think that everybody made some really good points. And I want to thank Sarah for hosting this and for everybody for participating in the chat. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right. Quick round of the super chats. We'll get to that, and then we will bring everyone that's backstage up to do the Q&A portion of this. Base Moon and their new membership. Welcome, my friend. Jason H. to you as well. Dragon Fist says, great topic. I'm surprised he's not backstage for this one. Robin, of course, dropping by. Moral progress is demonstratable, unlike God's. Tootie getting her Rockstar membership. Shout out to you, Love Bug. Howdy, Raging Sarah. Let's get those donos rolling, maters. Yes, if you want the gauntlet, get them going. Kraut also getting his membership. And at this point, once I saw the green coming across the screen, I told everyone to gift memberships. We'll do a membership drive, and they will count as dono goals as well. Robin says, knowledge does not require certainty. A fair thought from you. And of course, Mr. Alley Cat with the Big 10 says, I need to be on this panel. Even the idea that we are brains in a vat implies that there is a brain and a vat. This is Smoker's philosophy. Any thoughts, gentlemen?
I can't tell if he's agreeing with me or not. I agree with you that all of these have unstated premises that have to bottom out at some point. Obviously, yeah. Anyway, I would say that all of these assertions are going to have to bottom out at some unspoken and unasserted axioms.
Kind of take this in a slightly different direction, similar to like kind of the brain and the bad idea, simulation theory. There is a paper out there I don't remember the name of, but it kind of asserts that in order to simulate the universe as it is, it would require like 30 orders of magnitude more energy than what currently exists within the universe, which makes it extremely unlikely given, we don't really have access to said energy, but,
I just have to
of course, you could always just assert that it actually is a lot more energy than what it is, and we just don't have access to it, which...
Yeah, also that I'm actually the only one exists, so the people looking at the stars right now, they don't count. We don't need to simulate that going. We just need to simulate the shit right in front of me, which is far less.
And I think ultimately the claim is not specifically brains in a vat. That's the way we kind of conceptualize it, but it's brain states. That's really what we're talking about is brain states. So all you need at that point is energy, chemicals, things of that nature, which we actually can demonstrate, right? Equals MC squared. We can get all those things. So I think that brains in a vat, hard solipsism is unsolvable for many reasons, but I think the best way to address hard solipsism is through experiential asymmetry. And we can get into that if we ever want to debate hard solipsism.
I also wanted to push back on one of the previous comments where it said moral progress is provable where God is not. And I would actually argue that moral progress, also from, I think all four of us would agree on this, moral progress is not provable in that we know that given all the facts, we need all the facts. And if we're given new facts using our reason, we'll go, oh, those morals that we thought were right, given the facts we knew then, we've now learned are not right. Here's our new moral conclusion, right? Because we haven't gotten there. And I asked this question before, like, how can we prove that we've made moral progress? I feel like we have, but I don't know if it's truly provable.
I mean, there's a type of moral realist framework that I kind of learned about. It is moral intuitionism, and it's that you can't really like define good or bad, but you can still assert that they exist. Personally, I don't find it really compelling. The epistemology for that is just kind of dog shit because it feels very question begging. Like it's like, oh yeah, like good exists. It's just like over there.
I feel so
somewhere, and defining it.
And don't get me wrong. If somebody said, asked, I would say I agree with you. I would side on yours, but I would still also say, but I can't prove it. Right? It's just admitting the truth.
But proof is such a touchy word there because the truth, like time, is always going to be relative, right? Like Parmenides says, you cannot step in the same river twice, right? Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean that we cannot step into a river at any given moment in time and space. But once that water continues to flow, you'll never step in that same spot twice. So the truth can always change. It's always going to be relative to a particular state.
Something that I had a debate with one time, he got really frustrated with me because I was like, you can't prove that. And then he gave a proof. I was like, that doesn't follow for these reasons. And he's like, so is a proof just something that is convincing to you? And I go, holy shit, that is it. That is exactly what a proof is. That's all a proof is.
That is a big debate around proofs. Yeah.
I was like, you did that mockingly, and I agree with you.
So, like, it is often said that all a formal argument does is that it like just proves that the argument or that the conclusion follows from the premises.
Right.
And that, like, you could grant all the premises, grant the conclusion, and then kind of just say, well, it's not really that, like, destructive to my position, or that's not really like conducive to your position.
Yeah, I agree with that.
All right. Chris sends in the Big Ten. In my interpretation, morality is subjective. What makes it objective? Is society by consensus and enforced as the participating group? This is called the social contract. No religion or gods required. Any thoughts, gentlemen?
This is something that's so interesting to both of our positions, because objective ethics has said this a few times. Kind of this this statement. I don't want to put words in your mouth if you feel like this isn't something you said. I feel like you've said this, and I look at you and I'm like, are we saying the same thing? We've been saying the same thing the whole time. It does feel confusing when you're like, yeah, well, given the social conventions and given these specific groups, yeah.
I feel like there's a big difference between intersubjective and objective. I think social contract theory kind of relies on like an intersubjective form of like ethics. Which I believe is just grounded in subjectivity anyway. So I wouldn't affirm social contract theory, but I'm kind of as far as philosophy is concerned, I'm but a small little duck wading in a very deep pond.
Also, I started talking, and then Sarah was talking to other people in the chat and said "shut up" in all caps, and I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna stop talking."
I hate it when they yip in my private.
I deferred to someone else. I was like, "Oh, I don't know what I did wrong," and then I looked at it. I was like, "Oh, that wasn't to me." So that's why I ended my argument abruptly.
I said, "Shut up." Zill says, "Love it when you guys subjectively evaluate your objective."
True.
Great stuff.
Zinger.
Shots fired. Leo asks, can Spurgs have morals?
I feel like that's the greatest question of our lifetime. In my opinion, Spurgs can have morals, but once they stop being Spurgs in the moment.
I'm not online on. Oh, is that? Sorry, I looked it up. That's Asperger's. Gotcha. I'm not familiar with the lingo.
Welcome to Hyper Online debate spaces.
Spurg. Tom Carpenter is doing a quick little drive-by earlier with the Big 20. He says, still helping a friend with some issues in all of my spare time. Objectively, I'll be back Friday night. Subjectively, I may be back tomorrow night. # have fun. We love you, Mr. Tom. Kraut says, I think someone needs to look up the warriors' initiation practices in Zambia. Is that objective or subjective morality? The belief in God lays down the framework for objective morality. Any thoughts there?
I know Kraut and I have had a discussion about this in Sarah's Discord, and funnily enough, it's pretty obvious that belief in God does not lay down the framework for objective morality. If you just assert that God's morals are true in virtue of God commanding it, then it's obviously going to be subjective, unless you can somehow make your way into asserting that God doesn't really have a mind, which I find that to be highly contentious. And that, of course, if God is appealing to like some other objective framework, then why not just appeal to that objective framework in the first place rather than God?
You also have the circularity problem. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good.
You also have the circularity problem because God allegedly, at least in all the religious texts, acts morally. So then what is the reason that God acts morally? Oh, because God grounds morality. It just becomes a completely circular position.
Right.
And we get absurd positions like global floods are moral.
Right.
Because God did it.
I would agree with all these, by the way. But
then it seems like that there are like some moral facts then.
No, I would say that they're just not identified in God. I would say that you can't. Okay, whatever. I would say it's useless I would say it's useless to ground your moral intuitions in religion because those are so hard to negotiate that you're probably not.
A lot of the positions are kind of idiosyncratic to like just like how modern society acts.
100%.
I mean, we're not in a position where like the common man can own another person as a slave, and furthermore, women indefinitely. Like that's like super bad. Though
don't ask.
In a limited sense, the United States, that is still the case, which is pretty bad, but it is in a much more limited sense than what it was previously. So that would be, in my opinion, moral progress.
I mean, in both cases, for like me, who's the only like theist on the panel here, you know, I've got God. And for the rest of you guys, you have X, right? There's things that I say that like, why did God flood the world? I don't know. I'm not him. I don't have that I don't have that full view of everything and an answer for why somebody that has a full view has that answer. You guys have the same answer. You're going, well, when these things happen, we can look at X. Like when you basically, there's an X that we don't know. You're saying for our morality to continue progressing, we have to get that knowledge. But because we don't have all the knowledge, we can't say that we know what our subjective morality will be 100 years from now, because 100 years from now, you'll have more information, right? We're all working off this premise of something bigger than us, whether it's a mind, a God, or just a universal framework that we still have yet to understand. It still comes down to the same thing.
But in our current worldview, the three of us are compelled via empathy to say it's wrong to drown babies, and you are compelled to say, well, it's okay when God does it, and that's a huge difference.
Well, yeah, but it doesn't make it objective.
Makes me sleep better at night.
True. I am curious. I mean, I guess every theist has the same answer, so maybe this is uninteresting. But like, if God came to you and told you to drown a baby, is that moral? I guess it's just Euthyphro's dilemma, and I feel like every theist just says God wouldn't, which is a pretty.
It's a non-answer,
and also non-biblical. But
you know, yeah. I could say that if I was praying and I felt like he spoke to me in my ear and said that, I probably wouldn't. But if freaking God came down, sat down in front of me, I'd be like, holy crap. Even if I had like a 0.001% of doubt, it's gone. Right.
Vybe,
so
I need you to never be schizophrenic.
No, that's what I'm saying. If he were to whisper in my ear, I would not. Right.
No. But if he showed up in front of you,
would you?
Wouldn't it be the ultimate sacrifice, though, to say, you know what, God, I know you're telling me to do harm to this baby, but I would rather go to hell than to do harm.
As fuck.
Yeah,
it's like fuck you. Actually, maybe your moral system is more fucked than mine, and if that's the world I want to live in, you're an idiot.
But what if he knew that baby? Yeah. What if he knew that baby was going to be the next Hitler, but even worse?
Well, it still wouldn't.
I think we could kill him
justify
later.
Killing it because the baby in this instance is still innocent.
How about kill him? Innocent. How about if you're God, kill him right before he becomes Chancellor of Germany? How about that?
Or even better, God is powerful enough to make sure that baby doesn't come into existence. In the first place.
Yeah, but even at that, like if he's making this requirement upon me, right? And if you want to show me that you are true to God and you believe in God and all these things, and in order to do that, you need to harm this baby. I would say because of the things that I believe based on my value system, like I would rather make the sacrifice of myself and go to hell than I would to do harm to this
Which
child.
Is metal as fuck,
because,
yes, and it's based as hell.
But because I know that God would prefer I sacrifice myself than to do harm to an innocent child. Does that make sense? So it's like it becomes cyclical in that
100%. Because it's
but the dilemma comes into, and I want to just be gracious. I don't think Vybe would. I think Vybe would say, "I can't. I'm sorry, God. I love you. I want to be in heaven with all my dogs and ancestors, or relatives, or whatever he thinks is up there. But I cannot do this thing because I have too much empathy. I just cannot do this." I think Vybe would take that stand, even knowing that he believes in God. I want to give him that credit. The problem is that he would have to admit that would be sinning.
to
Yeah.
take that.
No,
But
but
that's
there's
a
always a
sacrifice.
way. There's always a way out. Sorry to do this, but
Well, there's always a way
You
out,
could
but it's
always
also
go.
hope.
Well, Constantine
Sure,
can
but you
tell
could always
all
just go.
about
That was actually that was a demon. That was actually a bad angel, and that was pretending to be God. You know,
Well, yeah, I
how
mean,
it's horrible,
but then the
and it's
theist
like,
kind of also falls into hard solipsism at that point, which
I 100% agree.
Yeah,
But, like,
this is why-
necessarily so. I recognize at least it's an arbitrary choice that we shouldn't, but like they have to default into it.
Yeah, I mean, I recognize in every debate that I do that I'm like I said, that I can't win, right? Like I can't give you guys what's like in my heart and what I know, right? This is
Sure.
subjectively my truth, subjectively the truth you're hearing from me, and therefore whenever I try to do debates, I try to step away from God because I can't sit here and tell you, well, because God said so, because God said so, because God said so. I have to appeal to your sense of science and nature. By the way, I'm an engineer. I like science. I like nature. I like facts.
I feel like it's also just an absurd view to you. I feel like it's kind of like betraying like the views that you've built up over time, absent of like God's
no.
Because
but here's the thing, like
God's influence in this case.
Anything I tell you like about the flood and the babies and slavery, if I tell you that's what God was thinking, now I am assuming the role of God, and I am also assuming that I know what he is thinking, right? Which I don't, and I have to freaking tuck my tail between my legs and actually admit I don't know why God does the things he does, right? Otherwise, I'm claiming to be God, and that would just be foolish. So I'm not going to sit up here and be foolish.
That doesn't really follow, though. Actually,
can I really quickly just. I'm gonna stand up for Vybe super hard here. I mean, look, I'm an atheist, but I grew up Mormon. I grew up, very deeply
I grew up
religious.
Catholic.
Sure, but like, the thing that I really want to assert is like, man, if I really had such a strong conviction where I felt like God was telling me this is true, and I felt like it was God, I wouldn't be an atheist. Like when Vybe is like, no, I genuinely believe it, and it's in my heart, and like. I really, really, truly believe that there's a God. It's like, I just don't have that conviction. And that's the only difference between me and Vybe. And if I had that conviction, I don't think I'd be murdering infants, but I do think I would be reading the Bible and going like, this is truth. And like, maybe I don't understand it. Maybe I don't get why slavery is in here. Maybe I don't get why certain laws seem to only be contingent based off of the time frame and seem really bad to me. But like, I don't know. I would also struggle with it and still believe in the Bible.
Yeah, and I mean, I can come back and actually like say a lot of different things on like time periods and writings and things that actually are clear to a secularist who didn't actually understand what they were reading in the Bible, because there's a lot of stuff that's just pulled from like a single quote and not taken in full context and not even taken in the history of the way all society was with or without God at that time, right? There were tons of slaves being owned by secularist people back then, right? So I mean, this is not necessarily a God thing, but this is not this conversation. So I'm gonna you guys want to set up another debate. I'm fair to come in and actually talk about these things, but I also want to keep it on topic.
Fair, I think. Not to speak
Awesome. Okay. I lost my spot. Zilzone says, with the big two, says, everybody freeze. He's trying to hold this channel ransom, but it's not going to work for $2. Admiral Gibbs is big 10.
Fuck off, Admiral Gibbs.
I said, I'm here because my Mossad handler has said, come support or you're next. And I didn't want to find out what that meant. Zilzone says, oh, he speaks like a ventriloquist. And Arch, by the way, I don't know what that means. Shout out to Spin City, sending not one, but two, but 3, 4, 5, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 14 Raging Tomato gifted memberships. Shout out to all the lucky lottery winners and thank your local Spin City panelist. Can we skip to the good part? Shut up, Zill.
Not for $2.
Spin City says membership drive. Shout out to you. And Zill says, Vybe, you got this, dude. Just tell him it's subjective. Shout out to Past and their 20 member chat. 20 month membership. That's loyalty right there. Fucking love you, Past. Says, keep up the great work, Sarah. I am so proud of you and your growth, being able to be a part of it. Much love. Hashtag real one, hashtag family, and hashtag respect. And fuck you guys and the Oreos. I'm about to just leave and run out. I hate all of you right now. For the Oreo fun, double stuff only. Vybe's going to get booted
Mint
again.
is also just as good.
Mints are amazing.
It's mint and
I was
double
actually
stuff and not much else.
I was actually sitting there thinking like maybe I'll DoorDash some Oreos, but then I was like, would I do double stuff or would I do the mint? But yeah, shout out to you. And Zillzone says arrest the lions and sharks for capital crime. What the fuck are you talking about, Zill? All right, gentlemen, we've got a full panel backstage waiting to hang out with you and ask you all their questions. Are you ready to meet your panel, gentlemen? All
Bring
right,
it.
Here we go.
Let's go,
Righty
suckers.
then. All right. Zill needs to learn the etiquette of the evening and how we operate here.
Okay.
Actually, Clay, why don't you explain to Zillzone how we operate this first portion?
Yeah, go ahead.
First portion while I get them back in order
Try
up
me,
here.
sucker. Try me.
Yeah. So first portion, as well as pretty much any time during the panel, if Sarah's speaking, you just shut the fuck up. It's that simple. And then you listen to her and you do what she tells you. It's really that simple.
And we are going to go one at a time, round robin style. So everybody else except for the top row can stay unmuted all they'd like, and you can answer to the question, interject, whatever you want to do. But as far as the bottom row, we will go one at a time for your Q&A or comment or whatever you want. However, this portion is respectful and polite, and we're going to ask questions nicely and answer them nicely. When we get to the gauntlet, you can have all the fun you want. Otherwise, hold it in. All right, Zillzone, since you were first one backstage waiting so patiently, just couldn't wait to get up here. So shout out to you. But go ahead and ask your question or make your comment or whatever it is that you'd like to do, since you're talking shit in the chat.
What's up, everybody? Y'all some suckers. You know it. You were suckers today. You'll be suckers tomorrow. It's okay.
How many
though.
beers deep are you?
A couple few.
Okay.
Don't be watching what I do. Don't worry about that.
I don't need to. I just inferred it.
Don't even worry about that. How about that?
I'm not worried. I just thought of it as like a fact of the matter.
He deduced it
make
through
you win.
and empathy.
You think
exactly.
the amount of drinks I have is going to make you win your argument? That's
wait.
crazy.
Wait. Okay, stop
That's
grandstanding.
crazy.
Actually, give the question now.
Yeah.
All right. Here's your problem. All of your whatever you build your constructs for your objective morality is really all just subjectivity. Imagine me, a Viking. I'm a Viking. Objective ethics. I'm a Viking. Yeah. I'm a Viking. And I got Viking friends, objective ethics. Yeah. And you know what? We think plundering is awesome by consensus. Yeah, we like that.
That's
and
your social contract.
And we're going to plunder everything, and you got to say that's moral, sucker. How you like that?
No, actually, no. First of all, I know you're just bullshitting me because you might be a Viking, but I know for a fact you don't have any friends. But if I just grant you,
hell yes!
Oh shit!
Coming out.
Woo! That's fired.
Willing to grant you this insane hypothetical. So in order for you and your imaginary friends to conquer anything and to pillage and do all these things, you must cooperate with each other. So the argument that I made is cooperation is fundamental to your success. So if we extrapolate that, we can logically say that the more cooperation, the more success.
And so you would have to say that is a moral thing for me to plunder.
Could I throw out just real quick?
No, these are morals. Dude, we're talking about morals.
I want to say extrapolation. Yeah, no, exactly. Extrapolation isn't necessarily linear. You can't just assume that more cooperation means better. There are a lot of things that are good in moderation, but then not better the more that you have them.
Right. That's why I'm a Viking, and I'm gonna take over the world.
So he has concluded that his cooperation should actually.
You think I'm moral, and I'm gonna take over the world, me and my friends. Sucker.
Yeah, just because there can be things that are better in moderation, I would agree with you. That doesn't apply to cooperation.
Look, my Viking friends cooperate with me. My Viking friends cooperate with me.
Less beneficial than less cooperation.
OE, my Viking friends cooperate with me. We take over and plunder together. Okay?
I got you.
But that's moral to you, though. That's moral to you.
But I mean, in the Viking framework,
it is, bro.
Wait. Whoa there, buddy. I need you to like spurg a little bit less for me and understand the rebuttal here. So going off of this, so wouldn't it be better if the Vikings, instead of plundering, they instead went over to these other people and instead shared the resources and then produce something a little bit greater than both of these societies
I think Vikings
combined?
are cool, and I'm going to cooperate with my other.
Well, yeah, you just
I'm
think
going to cooperate because that's moral. Cooperation and consensus means
but you're also not cooperating with the tribe.
No, I cooperate and I consensus with my Viking friends, and that's moral to you. It's just moral to you.
It's actually so. I'm actually a Viking buddy of his. I can confirm that he has friends. By the way, objective ethics. And we actually made a social contract that states explicitly that we have to murder others. That's our social contract.
Yes, it's way cool.
Well,
with us.
I
signed it and
personally
everything.
reject the social contracts.
Oh well, you're not part of our fucking
that's
tribe.
subjective.
So I don't
That's
fucking
subjective.
care.
Well,
actually.
I
don't care at
reject
all.
the subjective framework. Yes.
Yeah, I don't care about your subjectiveness at all. So you can be gone with that.
Well, yeah, the framework is subjective. It's not really objective.
Okay,
so,
you can take the L now. Okay,
What
take
L
it gracefully.
am I taking? I don't
take it
affirm
gracefully.
that. I don't
Be
affirm that
good.
social contract theory works
okay.
in objective frameworks.
It's all right. I'll let the rest of you guys talk. Okay, I won this, and I'll bow out now.
What?
That was pretty good.
I don't know. I don't know.
I think you won yourself another beer. Okay, that's all you really want.
Fair enough.
Hold on. He used logic. He used reason. He used empathy, and he used social contracts. He won that debate, in my opinion.
Got him, sucker.
Suckers. All right, effigy, my dear friend, to you, sir.
Really great debate, guys. Good conversation.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Vybe, for hiding in the corner and not saying anything for the entire thing.
Ooh, shots
I
fired.
think you did okay, Vybe. Don't listen
I
to
love
this
you,
dude.
Vybe.
Vybe
I
did
also
claim
think-
that
also
he was
think
the
Vybe did
idiot in the
okay.
room, though. He did say that. He said, "I'm the idiot in the room."
No, you're not. You're not the idiot in the room, Vybe, because you didn't bring up solipsism.
Hey, rude. First off, I was hyping you up, and then you turn on me.
No, I actually agree a lot with Kozak, but I have a default position where if you're the guy that brings up solipsism, all you deserve is to have the phone hung up.
You know what? That's valid. That's valid.
Because you should be arguing with yourself. So, quick fire questions. I'm on the fence on this one. I don't really kind of heavily lean toward either. I'm one of those people who think the answer might actually be both. But
let me not have a position.
Yeah. I love it not having a position, and it makes me be able to say all of you are wrong.
Oh, yeah.
But really quickly, just to rapid fire things. Vybe, can your God change its mind?
No.
It can't at all.
Like he's not
Can't change its mind, so it can't actually make any decisions. It was always destined to make its own decisions.
Yeah, I haven't actually followed this this thought of logic here, but if he's omnipotent, being in all times, in the beginning, in the end, in the middle, at all times, already knew what's happening there. My off the cuff gut would say he can't change his mind, although he made his mind up already, right?
No, he can't change his mind, then he can't
I'd
make
like
conscious
to read
decisions, right?
the Bible actually on this. Let's
my
crack open our
point
Bibles.
being is that if your God can change its mind, which I'm pretty sure there's actually a scriptural basis in saying that God can change its mind, because there's a story where God does change his mind. If God can change his mind, then he's a subject and he is subjective. And if your author is
but
subjective,
you've got to realize that you're putting
Job.
this in our linear time frame that this is written, right? So if he existed after and
you can't
before that
exist
fact,
outside
and
of
we're
time.
not,
Time is necessary for existence.
well,
He's just going to disagree
God,
with that.
yeah, is going to be outside of time, right? So
then
in
that
that
provides another
particular
characteristics
case,
into the word existence, because existence necessitates time. Things can't exist without time.
this is still outside of that, and this is going to be every theist.
You guys are
Other
just
theists are going to have the same.
You
Yeah.
guys are just quibbling on the definition of exist then, because he would say then he's real, but he doesn't exist then because he doesn't exist in the time frame. This is useless.
Yeah. You just need to point out an internal contradiction. So yeah, Vybe, can God act within time?
It's.
Hold on. Could I give the standard Sunday school answer?
Yeah, go. You know, go for it, Hunter.
The standard Sunday school answer. This is the one that I got when I was a kid. It's like watching a football game. Okay, it's like, It's the question about free will. Okay, and determinism. If you record a football game and then watch it later, a day later, and you watch someone make that decision, did they still make that decision? Yes, but you exist outside of that present tense situation that occurred. So you can still
but you're still in the timeline.
Still change your mind, but like changing your mind is also implicit within our time frame. He can make logical deductions. God can make logical deductions, and I'm saying this as an atheist, by the way, but he can make logical deductions, come to conclusions, and then express those over a series of time. And we calling it changing of mind implies this like time differential that doesn't really exist within God. That's the standard.
Why not? Even if the time is internally referential to the God, it's still changing your mind, and it's still making the objective morality that is supposedly authored by the God arbitrary and subjective.
Look, but it's the same thing, right? Like, so I decided to come on this panel. I made that decision. I believe in free will, right? However, can I change my mind? If I were to write that, like, maybe I wasn't going to go on this panel 4 days ago, but I changed my mind today. And therefore, it was written that I changed my mind. However, I can't change my mind after that action has already happened.
I will say that in the book of Job, Satan 100% changes God's mind. Like, he's like, what should I do about this dude? And Satan's like, torment him. And he goes,
yeah, that's the story I was referencing.
I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it.
There's another example there's multiple examples. This is actually contradictory because you get examples of both in the text. And I don't necessarily feel like doing a whole Bible search right now, but the Bible does say that God is not a man that he could change his mind. It also states in stories like they mentioned Job. You can also think, I believe it was Abraham and Lot, if I'm getting that story correctly, with Sodom and Gomorrah, where God's like, I need to decide. No, that's the wrong story. It's the story of Moses, I think, when he tells Moses, I need to decide what I want to do. So it infers that God is sitting there mulling decisions over.
Look, you just don't understand. Anytime that we read the Bible, it has to be interpreted through our human lens. So anytime that we understand it, it's actually through our subjective and ephemeral perspective. And anytime it's translated into our language, objective ethics, duh.
But that makes it inaccessible to us and incoherent to us. The other thing I would say, Effigy, there is a really good argument to be made, and I've wondered about this myself. Can morality be objective and subjective? And what I found in philosophy, and I'm not a philosopher, as you guys can probably tell, but what I found is that there is a way of addressing this called meta-ethics. And so people will ascribe the objective nature of what we think of as morality to the meta-ethical side, and the subjective nature of what we think is independently right and wrong to the subjective side. So can they be both is a really good question, actually.
Sure. And we talk all the time, especially in religious conversations, about truths in the universe that we cannot perceive, right? So could it be possible that there is an objective moral truth out there, but we are still stuck in a subjective bubble that can't reach it? And Kozak, I had a question for you. Is it possible that morality is an emergent descriptive property of the physical universe that only emerges in conscious agents?
I would say yes, but like I said, Occam's razor sort of slashes it to pieces. I say it's not necessary. It is possible that these moral facts exist, but my theory is fully explainable. So I don't know why we're asserting that it exists, if that makes sense.
I get you.
Okay.
Yeah, all right, cool. Before I go, let me throw one at the other side really quick, because like I said, I love all sides of this conversation. Guys, how do you explain in us having any kind of access to objective moral truth if like we said earlier, we're beings that are evolved purely for survival and not made with abilities to discern objective truth, but to discern survivability. Like I said just now, even if there is an objective moral truth in the universe, how could you possibly say that our current systems are in any way reflective of any kind of they could be reflective of the search for objective moral truth. They could be reflective of the idea that objective moral truth exists, but I don't see them as systems being anything but subjective reflections of our own subjectivity.
Yeah, so I can try and go through this. So as far as I know regarding the evolutionary debunking argument, my response to that would be that I do agree insofar as that our brains have kind of developed purely, or it's not even purely, but just like in part for survival. There's still like mechanisms within the brain that still account for like reasoning that isn't like just short term, but is also like oriented towards like the long term goals. The problem is that the short term might just be a little bit more dominant in that, and that is what produces a lot of our biases. So going from there, a lot of like the developments in morality and the developments in science and otherwise have come from just overcoming those biases and kind of pushing towards what is rather than what we kind of perceive it to be, and whether those ideas are true or not.
Could I follow up that question?
Go for it.
I'm super curious how do you and this sounds so pretentious, so I apologize in advance.
No, you're good.
How do you know that
we expect it from you, Kozak?
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm glad I have that. I'm glad I have that. How do you know that rationality isn't like, because we agree that like a lot of these fallacies, like correlation implies causation, are probably like environmentally necessary. They're probably like, someone ate a berry and it poisoned them and they said stay away from that berry, even though that might not exist, but it seemed to benefit us evolutionarily. And so we sort of held on to these ways of framing our mind and framing the world around us that helped us in previous previous generations. How do we know that rationality isn't one of these like byproducts of evolution that we're leaning on actually incorrectly?
I mean, I kind of hold to the idea that I'm more than likely wrong about like certain like propositions, whether propositions even exist. I could be wrong on that. I personally have not done a great amount of looking into meta ethics yet. One because I've actually been reading a metaphysics textbook to start off with, and then I'm kind of wanting to delve into other aspects of philosophy. So let me find the book. Actually, I've been sitting on my computer as a totally legal.
Well, this is also why it's kind of so shitty to go down that solipsist line and try to like deconstruct reality as a whole and be like, we can't actually have objective truth or objective reality, because that's in which we base everything, right? Truth is what comports with reality. If we don't have an objective reality, we have no objective truth. So at some point we have to just agree that reality exists, right? We all just have to have a shared reality experience so that we can move forward. Like when you're saying that logic doesn't exist, it's like, yeah, sure, but we still have to use it so that I can fucking talk to you.
Yeah, but that would
exactly
be like a subjective
exactly
framework.
my claim. That's the only reason I brought up solipsism, is that we just have to disregard it because we need to, not because it's like necessarily true. It's like we just have to fucking move through the world.
Yeah, to answer the question that FG asked, it is, or whoever asked, sorry.
I think
Alyssa Nay's metaphysics introduction.
Oh, okay, I don't know it.
Yeah,
hope it's good. Actually, I hope it isn't.
I'm enjoying it so far.
Isn't. I hope you hate it.
So did you say you brought up solipsism just to say that we don't need to worry about solipsism?
Yeah, that was my whole point. Hold on, I made that clear in my argument that I was bringing it up to say whatever we can.
That solipsism really isn't like that big of an issue in the grand scheme.
It's that we dismiss it. We dismiss it dogmatically. We dismiss it because it's useful to, because we don't want. It's not helpful to wander around the world.
Which
and
is
go,
exactly
"Are
why we
ever in
never
the
bring it up.
I agree with that.
Because
but
we don't need
Exactly.
to.
But you're bringing it up too. What the fuck kind of?
You brought it up first.
Wait. You just mentioned extinction. You just mentioned extinction. Say that real quick.
I don't know what that is. Use mentioned.
Yeah, one of the
it's to describe it real
things
quick.
we use
There's a difference between using a word and like mentioning it. So using a word would just mean
Sure.
It means you're kind of putting it into like the context to like invoke its meaning, and then the mentioning is just you're like just invoking the word itself.
Right. He mentioned it. I used it.
Yeah.
I think there is. FG, in answer to your question, I think that we can look at things from an empirical lens. So this is where, I think it's Sam Harris who might kind of makes this argument based more on human flourishing than opposed to like reason, empathy, things of that nature. And of course, I'm sure he ties all this together at some point. But really, his argument for objective morality hinges on this human flourishing concept. And we can actually look back throughout history and see what the human condition has been, population numbers, health, things of this nature.
But it's always a degree of definition, right? Because the religious people are always going to use the word objective to mean intrinsic to the universe, whereas we can find definitions of objective to mean we all agree, or objective outcomes and stuff like that.
Sounds like our definitions of objective are pretty subjective.
Right.
I have just my framework for objective is, as I tried to hammer down in the debate, was that it's either stance independent or based on true facts.
Yeah, I like anything that's objective is either true or false.
Anyway, great conversation. That's all for me. I'll move on to the next question.
Sometimes I really like Wittgenstein when he said that philosophy just feels like a way of just dangling words in front of them, taking them out of context, and then just masturbating with them. I'm like, dude, he was fucking spitting. We're not doing jack shit here.
I mean, there's a reason why the people seem to really find a disgust with Phil Bros.
No, and it's valid.
And Wittgenstein might be onto something there.
Yeah, I love him. He's my favorite.
All right, let's go ahead and move on to Brandon. Brandon, it's been a while since you've been on panel. Glad to see you here again. Your question or comment, please.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I have a question for both sides. I'll ask Vybe and Hunter first, because the prompt says something about, can you have objective morality without God, essentially? Do you guys think it's possible, if God doesn't exist, that moral realism is true? Do you think that's possible?
So I'll go first, I guess. I've said this before, that I do think it's possible. I haven't really been shown I haven't really been
That's a concession, by the way. Get right.
Oh shit!
True, because it does say can, not does.
Yeah,
that's actually true. That maybe I've actually been on the wrong side of the debate the entire time. Holy shit!
Yeah, these prompts are very subject to what I like to coin
to my perspective. That's a concession. We just flipped.
Yeah, but the term I like to use, it's very non-PC. It's called prompt raping. It's very much just taking the prompt and just kind of utilizing it to its like very evil extent. And by evil, I just mean
Yeah.
So it's like very like being overly semantic about it. Which I've done before.
You know, on Brandon's question too, I actually kind of came to the conclusion before this, like with Hunter, like once again trying to remove God and going, could there be an ultimate? It's not written, but just using like mathematics and logic and physics, an ultimate good for the end of the universe, where if we play our cards this direction, that would be the best way to do it as a society here on Earth, as species in the universe, and things like that. But then I started thinking, which would mean I would say, yes, it can. But then I actually brought it up in the debate. When I actually started thinking that, I was trying to figure out, but what is who determines what the best ending is, if there is an ending, for all of that? And then all of a sudden now, even if there is that truth, there has to be like 20 different endings depending on what we do. Somehow there has to be a consensus on which ending is the proper ending. And therefore, all of a sudden now I go, well, now the whole concept kind of goes out the window.
I'm 100% with Vybe. I'm 100% with Vybe, but I'm also like, but maybe someone shows me a stance independent thing and I go, oh, okay, I guess that actually reframes everything for me. And I totally understand having like
a genuine vantage point that is objective and above every other human, that is like, it's something that we can point to. But I haven't been demonstrated that one bit. Like, it really does feel very clearly like it is impossible to have like stance independence just doesn't exist. That there is no universal standpoint.
Stance independence categorically or in the realm of morality?
I would say categorically. I feel like
that's a big burden you just put on yourself.
Is it?
I mean,
well, then I'm just thinking
what
about
would
physics.
Be the argument for that be?
Well, I would say that Einstein said very clearly that there's not a universal standpoint, that motion is all relative to the observer. I don't know what else that applies to. Is there another field that I'm not thinking of that it fucks my position?
Like, do you think the moon is stance independent, or do you think it depends on our stances?
The moon's motion absolutely depends on our stances.
No, its existence, not the motion.
That's a weird.
You want to say yes, right? Like it exists.
No, for sure.
Independently.
But it's difficult to say because there's so many realities that seem so obviously true, like the Earth being flat, that ended up not being true. That it's kind of hard to say. But maybe that's also just appealing to objectivity, because I'm saying that we just haven't discovered it yet, but it's still out there.
Sure.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I might have to chew on that one a little bit. Yeah. But I would probably say no. I would probably say that I'm a realist when it comes to things existing. But I don't know.
But I would also ask, like, let's just grant that there is the right answer for everything universally, right? My next question to be that if I were to grant that, is it knowable? Will it ever be knowable by us? And I would say that actually probably isn't. We're probably actually never capable of knowing it 100%. The moral progress, maybe like right now we're at 10% of knowing it, and maybe someday we'll get up to 20% of being
But
morally
it's an
correct.
asymptote. We're just we're just approaching it.
Yeah.
And we'll never.
I mean,
actually
it's similar. It
Correct.
would be similar to how the scientific method kind of approaches to the fact of the matter on stuff like biology or physics. Something similar to that. Oh, Hunter's about to say something there.
No,
yeah, and I think it also depends on what you mean by no, of course.
Yeah, that's.
I did have a question for the other side though. It sounds like Bones is kind of on the fence. I don't even think he's necessarily a realist, right?
I am very much on the fence. Like I said,
sure.
I had about maybe a little under 24 hours to prepare an argument in favor of whether more realism can exist, with a very fledgling knowledge of meta ethics in general. So that was probably the best I could come up with in that span.
Oh, sure. Okay. Yeah. Well, my question was going to be if you guys take any specific meta ethical theory.
Sorry. Go ahead. Objective ethics.
Well, no, my subjective ethical system is utilitarian. I feel very convinced by, just strict utilitarian.
And to put my cards on the table, I am an anti-realist. I'm not a realist.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
Based, right?
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I don't necessarily separate ethics from morality when it comes to this particular question. I think that we can identify that categorically it functions to say medical ethics or legal ethics or business ethics or whatever it is, but that's just to establish it there. Once we set this goal, there are principles that we can then apply to said goal. So I think that works functionally the same way with just saying that, as I've said before, once the goal is established, we can obtain true facts to lead to the goal. So I don't think it's useful, in my opinion,
objectivity.
other than moving the conversation to whether or not both can exist, which I think is actually a good conversation to have. Can we have both objective and subjective views on this? But I'm not sure how to really put all that together because it's not the position I hold.
Okay.
Yeah,
we'll talk more.
It feels crazy the more we talk, but we're
things.
just shifting onto each other's sides, because I feel like that was a subjective talking point for sure, and I've said some objective. I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're all little ducks in the deep pond of philosophy. Okay, we're all trying to get along our own way here. But to answer Brandon's question, honestly, within the span of the 24 hours, I kind of fuck with a moral naturalism, and then also constructivism is also kind of sitting in there. Virtue ethics as well. Like that also like seems like something that seems pretty like interesting.
I've only
prior to kind
I've
of
only-
deep diving into
real quick.
meta ethics for like 24 hours.
I've only heard constructivism
utilitarian.
in terms of linguistics and math. What is it in terms of ethics? What is constructivism?
So basically, constructivists kind of assert that there are like moral facts, but unlike other systems which other moral naturalist theories don't really have a great answer to, like the moral imperative. A constructivist says that there's a certain process that you go through in order to kind of determine whether there is a moral imperative to do something. I could be wrong, but that's like my.
I just
very,
looked something up.
cursory
I just looked
glance.
something up real quick. It says ethical constructivism is the meta-ethical view that moral truths are not objective stance, independent facts waiting to be discovered. Boom, bah!
Oh shit! No,
He's on our side.
Fuck. But yeah,
That's
well,
a
like
concession,
I
by the
said,
way.
it's been like 24 hours. That's probably where I'm like sitting at. Which is to say, I'm unsure about moral realism.
Base.
And that, unfortunately, I'm a LARPer.
I came up here to LARP. It's okay. I was going to LARP as a realist. It's fine.
All right. All set, Brandon? All right. Clay, I'm going to kick it over to you, sir.
Cool. Thank you, Sarah, and thank you guys for coming up and having this discussion, this debate. This was actually really enjoyable. I have to give Bones a lot of credit tonight, bro. It was actually pretty good watching you. Thank you. Also,
I'm not sure whether to take that as a compliment,
I know,
given
he
our
said-
previous interactions.
He said
with
it actually like it was surprising. He's like, usually you fucking suck. actually,
No.
this time it was not bad.
Nah, it was good though. It was good. It's a compliment. So I'm really glad that you guys got off the subject of whether God exists or not. I know that's how the conversation started out, and that I think is one of the difficulties in having this conversation of whether these things like objective morality can exist without God. It kind of can go all sorts of different ways, and one of the ways it did go immediately was whether God exists or not. But you guys actually got to the conversation, got to the real debate. But I did have some questions in regards to some of the things that you guys were saying on OE's and Bones' side. In reference to the is-ought problem. One of the things that I noticed is that you guys were presenting a lot of mathematical axioms as facts, which is accurate. This is true. These things are reality. We have to go by these things. But a circle, a square, these things are not morality. These things are just simply real, if you will. Whereas what is good and what is bad, what is right and what is wrong is what we're talking about when we're talking about morality. And so that's where I was hoping you guys would get into. And you did present some arguments and present them as, it's just obvious. It's not right to, unalive, little babies, blah, blah, blah. However, with that said, there's also the arguments against, well, what if that baby grows up to be a horrible, horrible person? And I feel like you contended with that very well. However, I think my question is going to be about the human mind itself. And I know this goes into solipsism, if you will. Indulge me for a minute on that. When you're talking about the people who decide, the group, the we, I think this was the biggest contention that I had, especially with UOE, is you kept saying, well, we decide, which presents to me the question, who is we and who is not we? And if we agree and not we disagrees, then why do not we disagree?
think I followed that. You kind of lost me at the wheeze, not wheeze. I'll be honest with you. I'm getting a little hungry, so I'm starting to maybe lose my focus a little bit. But you brought up
we need an Oreo break.
And I want to follow you, Clay, just to make sure here. So stop me if I'm wrong. But it seemed to me you started talking about the is ought problem, the guillotine, right? And I did bring that up at the beginning of my opening argument because a lot of people do try to introduce the guillotine into this conversation. And so we know we can derive oughts from ises, both linguistically by building the bridge, right? And with the if, like I gave the example, if a surgeon wants to perform a successful surgery, they ought to sterilize their equipment. So this ought is built off of the is, right? And we bridge that logically with the if. The other thing we can look at is just empirically. So I mentioned the oxytocin, right? So there's, if I want oxytocin, I know I have to play nice with others. That's how oxytocin is generated in the body chemically, right? Biochemically. I crave oxytocin as a part of my biological genetic makeup. The is literally caused by the ought. So hopefully that addresses kind of the is ought situation. And I would refer you to other scholars who've already addressed this, because Hume did not say this is a universal thing. You cannot do this. Socrates, Plato, all the way up through Dr. Carrier specifically addressed this is ought gap, and a lot of people misunderstand this. The other thing I would say is the in-group, out-group. So what we're looking for is building up a justifiable argument, right? It's an argument that justifies our particular position. So if we know that cooperation works, then it logically follows that more cooperation would work better. So somebody I think earlier said, well, we can have instances where moderation is good. And I said, absolutely. But how does that actually apply then to cooperation, moderate cooperation versus just cooperation? I think it kind of falls apart. Logically speaking, I can't conceptualize a situation where more cooperation is actually worse for people than less cooperation. I can't. Now that might be my own ignorance and my own incredulity, and I may have to just bite that bullet at that point.
I do want to
go ahead, Hunter. Yeah.
Couple things. First off, I very much disagree with your is odd answer, where like if whatever, what was it? If a surgeon wants to save a patient, he ought to perform surgery or something like that.
If a surgeon he ought like sterilize the equipment.
Surgery,
clean
he ought to sterilize his equipment.
Great,
because we know that the sterilization of equipment will statistically improve the chances of successful surgery.
That material conditional is a statement in of itself. It's not Q. It's not that's if P then Q, not Q itself. It's not
if you're just arguing that it doesn't follow logically.
No, I'm saying you didn't ascertain any ought. That's an is statement that is true, but ought that to be the case? Ought it be the case that if a surgeon wants to heal a patient that you should clean his utensils? You haven't answered that question. You've only declared that it is.
We did with the bridge by saying if the surgeon, then the surgeon ought to. That's the
link. But what you need there is a premise that states P. That a surgeon wants it.
Right. Why is the ought there?
Because it's based on the if conditional. So if he wants to do this, he ought to do that. Because we know that doing that will lead to the goal. If that's the goal he wants, he ought to follow certain steps that will lead to his goal.
What if the goal is not desired?
I think Hunter's trying to say that conditional if the surgeon wants to save the patient or whatever, then he ought to sterilize his equipment. I think he's saying that conditional. You're not showing that that's true, right? That would need to be shown to be true. Are you saying something like that?
No, I'm saying that is true, but that not ought to be true. The if P then Q is true, but it's not ought to be true. What you do need to do in order to invoke Q, all you're claiming is that if P then Q is true. You're not invoking that Q is true. You need P to be true for Q to be true. So you would need to actually invoke that the surgeon ought to want this.
If I may too. If I may too.
It's also just like a formal fallacy.
Go ahead, Clay, because it's your question. Go ahead.
Yeah, when you're doing logic, right? You got to exclude a middle, right? Where's the excluded middle?
It's confused.
Right. Why is it that I should do it is answered, but the answer of why it is that I should not do something else is not answered.
So the symbolic representation of this argument is actually like P implies Q, Q therefore P. I think that's like formally like it's
wait. Say it one more time.
valid.
Say it one more time.
The symbolic construction of the
Is-
of OE's argument is like P implies Q, Q therefore P.
Exactly.
That to me just sounds like invalid.
If I may,
Which
here
is
it
why.
Here it is.
God,
Why
wait,
is that?
hold on.
Why
Let
is
me
doing-
let me
hold
like
on,
work. Wait. Let me
hold on.
work through it, Clay. Let me work through it. Like
Okay.
There's like another interpretation. There's another way to go through the is-ought gap, and I'm like blanking the fuck out right now because I was just listening to like a K&B video about this, about this specific idea, and it's that there's another way to kind of interpret it, and it's that in a similar way where we can kind of like describe like what a hedgehog is, but we can't like ascribe like all of these properties to kind of be like necessary. In the same way that you ought to like do a certain set of procedures to do like a surgery in order to attain some goal or some like concept. It's like it doesn't necessarily follow that if all of these are true, then that is true. But if we just reject it, then we're kind of betraying the concept of like what a like sterile like surgical background is, or a sterile surgical
the law
environment.
of excluded middle. Why would it?
I don't think that has anything to do with the law.
I'm confused about it. Yeah.
No.
I'm also confused.
I'm trying to explain it. I'm trying to explain it. Okay.
That's fine.
Why would it necessarily be immoral to do otherwise?
That might be for you then.
Yeah.
Not sterilize the equipment, or in
no,
another
not
hypothetical.
Oh.
Yeah, even if you just go straight for the sterilizing of the equipment, right? So I'll give you an example. Doctors in triage in the field in war, right? Now they might not have enough time to suture a wound, so ultimately sterilization might go out the window, right? So each instance presents its own value within the moment as to what might be necessary. So not every single situation presents the same answer.
And let me interrupt for just a moment, only because that's a big $200 whopping dollars on the screen. I will read all of the other super chats at the end of the Q&A, but this is a big fat red dono on my screen. It's my favorite color. Shout out to Fourth Wiseman. Here's Sarah and everyone. Keep going. I got to go in a few minutes. We love you so much, Fourth. We'll definitely be around later if you're coming back. We appreciate you. Love you so much. Tomatoes in the chat for Fourth Wiseman if you haven't already. And I'm going to leave that one up on the screen for a little bit. Go ahead, Clay. I apologize.
Thank you, Fourth Wiseman. It's always great to see you come through and lay down a banger. Appreciate that. But essentially with the is-ought problem, I think that, what Hunter was pointing at about logic itself kind of comes into play about how not everybody is going to have the same tools within their own framework of logic. Reason works. I like reason because reason presents an argument, and an argument is giving you the ought. Now, I can also reason to do bad things, what I claim to do, what I claim is good or bad. So essentially, reason just simply doesn't give me enough to even claim morality itself either. What I'm saying essentially is that at some point, I have to realize solipsism is the answer. I always need to question what is good and bad. Solipsism is the answer because we all exist within our own minds, within our own bodies. And if we work together, we can get and do something that's beneficial. But that doesn't mean that that beneficial thing is always going to be quote unquote good or bad. And this is actually something I learned in life management skills in high school because advertisers use these words all the time. Good, bad, better, best, worst, whatever, to try to get you to buy their product. And I think that's where I'm going to leave it. I appreciate you guys. Like I said, I know OE has to get some food in him, so I'm going to try to give these guys a little more time.
I did enjoy speaking with you, Clay. I don't get on these panels very often, but I really enjoyed having a chance to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. And OE, if you do need to step away or if you do need to go, you're more than welcome to. I don't want you to feel held hostage or anything, but I want to send one more big time shout out because that's another big one coming in over on Mr. Balderson's side from our darling fourth Wiseman with the 10 gifted memberships. Shout out to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Wiseman. You're the best, brother.
And Ben, it is your turn for Q&A.
I think the only person through this debate that I agreed with in general was probably Hunter's. I don't. It's an extreme twisting of the word objective when you start making it have no object. When you've decided that something I cannot weigh and measure is objective, and that other people's opinions are just wrong. This is honestly, if I believed in objective morality, I would say people that believe in objective morality are objectively the worst people and have caused the most damage in history.
That's based as fuck. Asserting your dominance over others.
I guess the response to that would just be that people who claim to have an objective moral framework that was wrong, they would just be like causing like some sort of harm. Like they would just be wrong. They would be mistaken about the moral facts, and that mistake caused like substantive moral harm. In particular, like the theistic frameworks, I'd argue has produced a good amount of harm. In general.
I agree. It's particularly like we can easily look at Christianity and all the things that they've done just because other people don't believe the same things that they do. And they have their objective morality. If I believed in objective morality, objectively, that's some shitty shit. And those people are bad people. And they feel like they're good people doing it because these other people have broken this unweighable, unmeasurable, objective morality.
Yeah. So I kind of talked about this a little bit earlier about like whether we should care about a moral imperative in the first place. I actually think that like an objective framework could potentially like skirt away from like that moral imperative and in such a way that there wouldn't be like a motivation in some sense to kind of act atrociously based off of reasoning. And like that could be a way of escaping it. Again, like this is me kind of just like throwing shit to the wind and seeing if it sticks. But I feel like that would be
which I agree.
Maybe Hunter could further regiment this or contest this.
I agree. Functional societal moralities, that's mostly how they derive. So I agree with that. And I think that that's a good process. But to say that it's objective means that every single person has to agree with that.
Absolutely.
Every single person says this is a sharpener. Like that's I can weigh, I can measure it. It's what it is. That there's no arguing this. That's what.
All that moral realism suggests is that there are some like moral facts. It could be the case that there's like one moral fact. It could be the case that there's like 2, maybe 100, maybe 500. But that's all that moral realism really asserts, is that there is an objective fact of the matter to morality.
Right. And I'm saying that that is absolutely incorrect. And the people that think that, or at least live by one, that they think that other people are evil specifically because they have a different morality, which automatically takes it out of the objective range. Like that other people absolutely disagree with your nobody disagrees.
So all you can argue is that they're just wrong about like what the moral fact is, and that's what makes them evil, or they like arrived irrationally.
You have to prove that there's a moral fact. I can prove this is a
I agree. Yeah, the burden is on me to prove that there is a moral real fact. Yeah.
Right. So this unweighable, immeasurable thing, if you're trying to say you're better because this other person disagrees with it, well, that's because
not just because they disagree, but because they're wrong about the fact of the matter.
Who's wrong about the fact of what matter?
In a disagreement regarding morality, a moral realist would say that the other person would be wrong because they are mistaken or incorrect on a certain fact of the matter with respect to morality.
Right. Agree.
Yeah.
And those
it's not based off of just like, it's not just based off of like their thinking. It is based off of like, it could just be like some sort of like practices for reasoning that lead to like this like certain fact being true. It could just be that this fact that some moral realists, especially on the more like theistic side, would just say that they're like transcendental per se. Not that I subscribe to that, but
if you could ultimately prove, right, that there is objective morality without God, and you could lay out the facts that were indisputable, let's just say that exists, you'll still have people, because not everybody is part of this moral agency group that can do that will disagree.
Yeah, and they would just be wrong. That would
you guys
just
understand the whole
if they
thing where
disagree with a
everybody
moral fact,
agrees
they'd be wrong.
That this is a sharpener. That's why it's an objective fact. The whole thing where other people can disagree with your saying that we can all on the panel agree grape's a horrible thing, but it's also like in some countries an actual culture and very well celebrated. They love doing that shit. And so they don't think what we think. They also somehow think that this is a sharpener. Like that's because it's objective and subjective.
The only response to that would just be that like certain countries or certain cultures, countries, whatnot, insert any like group of people could be practicing something that is not what we are practicing. And again, it would just be the case that they would be wrong about it. Depending on the framework, again, if we kind of invoke a virtue ethics framework, they would just be like holding to an internal contradiction on their beliefs. That if they ought like respect their own well-being, that they through like this like chain of the process, they also ought respect other people's well-being as an extent, or otherwise they'd be in contradiction.
No, nobody said.
I have a question for Ben. Sorry, because maybe I'm confused, and you're taking my side, so I don't want to disagree too much. But I'm just curious what you mean, because it seems like what you're asserting is that morals, because they're not cross-cultural, it means that they're subjective, and situations that are cross-cultural, like whether or not that's a sharpener, those are objective. Couldn't you say that
objective includes an object, something we can weigh and measure?
Sure.
That's a weird definition of objective.
Hold on. I'm curious. Would you? It feels weird that you're asserting other cultures believing different things, because I could certainly point to different cultures that believe in flat Earths, and Earth is definitely like a substance that is weighable, that is measurable. Maybe not traditionally, but it's certain. Like we still know the weight of the Earth, and there are cultures that disagree. And I would probably say that that's objective. Would you not?
I would say that because you actually can't weigh and measure it, it isn't objective. That's the problem. That's where that's coming in. That's why other people will disagree, because there isn't actually an objective weight. You're making an extrapolation and of information. You aren't actually weighing and measuring it.
I mean, okay, hold on. With respect to like whether the Earth is flat or round or an oblate spheroid, there is a specific. Whoa there. Let me get my point in. There's this specific experiment called Foucault's pendulum, and basically over the course of that experiment, it's trying to determine whether the Earth is actually rotating, which would be a feature.
Why'd you do this, Hunter? I blame you for this, Hunter. Right?
I apologize.
So it would be a feature of either. Like,
I should have just said you were right and then shut up.
Straight up. Now we're drugged into this bullshit.
So it would be a feature of the flat Earth if it rotated in like this specific way, and then it would be a feature of a round Earth if it rotated in another way. The experiment showed that the Earth rotates in a way that is in concordance with a round Earth. And so that evidence leads us to believe that it is more likely that a round Earth exists rather than a flat Earth. So if you want to continue to try and steamroll me, that's perfectly fine, but I'm just going to continue to talk and finish my point.
Your point is moot. It didn't even have anything to do with what was just being said. Now you're bringing in rotation of the Earth.
These are evident. It is evidence in favor of a specific proposition to demonstrate whether it's true.
You can't actually get away and measure and weigh this. This is why they argue, because you're extrapolating information. You're not weighing and measuring. Oh,
okay,
geez.
So yes, you can. Yes, you can measure. Foucault's pendulum is measuring the rotation of the Earth.
You're using
and it's dependent specifically on the latitude and the longitude, and it's derived in such a way where it is only dependent on the latitude and longitude, and it is in concordance with what we would expect on a round Earth.
You're probably assuming a uniform consistency to the Earth.
He
right?
assumes a
Right,
lot
no,
of things.
yeah.
It's
The assumptions
it's
for
gotten
so-called
so
pendulum
far
includes
from
that
the
the Earth
fucking
is like
argument,
perfectly
I just
spherical.
don't even want to
It
play
is
with
an oblate spheroid, and I believe there are corrections for an oblate spheroid specifically.
Yeah, but
the point still stands that it's more likely that the Earth is going to be round based off of this given set of facts and how the Earth rotates rather than a flat Earth based off of a different set of equations.
All right.
Well, Balderson, I will say, I'm not going to push back whatsoever on the claim that people who claim to have the keys to morality have, in fact, done horrific things historically. In particular, organized religions have used this as a cudgel to do terrible things. So I'm totally with you on that. The only thing is, I'm having a really difficult time. It's probably my own, lack of education in philosophy and a lot of other areas. But I'm having a difficult time tying everybody's perspective together. It sounds to me like you're saying there is no such thing as objectivity outside of objects that can be weighed and measured, which isn't a working definition of objective that I'm familiar with. So that's probably, again, my own.
Weird the word
fault
object
here.
is in there then, right?
What's that, brother?
So
it's weird the word object is the main word in that then, right?
Holy equivocation policy.
Well, I think the delineation.
Well, no, that's actually root word dump. It's actually root word dump.
Yeah, I know. You're just using the incorrect usage with respect to the conversation. All objective is meant up until your invocation, by the way, has been that the specific position is mind independent. All that objectivity is referring to is a mind independent thing that exists.
Right.
Like
so
some sort
it's
of concept that
so
exists.
it's an object, something we can weigh and measure. It's not.
It's not just an
head.
not just an object, but a concept too that
retard.
exists mind independently. Are you actually incoherent? Like, what are we doing?
You are fucking.
It doesn't just refer to objects.
It's not just.
It doesn't just refer to things that naturally exist. It
I
refers
can't
to things
measure
that
it.
specifically
Can't
exist
head.
mind independent. Are you confused? That's
I'm
fine.
not
You can be confused.
confused.
The problem
I'm
is
not
you're not going to sit here and assert
Mind
that
independent means
that
it's
your
an
usage is
object.
the correct usage when we've been using it in an entirely different way, respective to you.
Mind independent means
You just
there's
weren't
an
listening to the
object.
conversation, which is fine.
Shut the
the
fuck
two
up,
of
Bones, you
you.
fucking little bitch.
Hold on. The
Shut
two
up,
of you
stupid bitch.
always get heated, and I love the heat. But I want to say, Fourth Wiseman also sent over on Ben's side a big hundo. He says, for the Benjamin Fund. Can't stay, but enjoy.
Thank you,
Yes,
Ford.
we love you, Fourth. And of course, if you want to stop an entire Q&A session and put red on my screen and I will stop it. Okay. Kraut is going to kick us off once we move over to the gauntlet, but I want to make sure that we are getting that there. Backstage, I do have Alley Cat, Tavo, and Black Magic hanging out. They would love to come and join us. But now that we're going into gauntlet mode, you have to boot somebody off to be able to get them on. So in the meantime, OE, I wanted to give you, did you want to make your exit before we maneuver?
Yeah, I am but I will jump into the chat so I can at least listen and follow along. But on my way out the door, I'd just like to reiterate what I said. I want to thank both of my opponents today for being respectful and intellectually honest and engaging with the actual questions and not dodging and all the bullshit that I see happen in a lot of these performative debates. I'd like to thank Sarah for hosting this, another great show. I'd like to thank Bones for jumping in last minute, and it's really unfortunate. But I'm sure Nobody on Fire had a really good reason, some family work, whatever it might have been. So I want to be gracious to him as well. And just want to thank everybody for their participation. And please do like and subscribe to everybody's channel. And other than that, I'm going to just see my way out. Thank you so much.
Hey, wait, hold up real quick. I just want to say that, Sarah, if you don't mind, you seem pretty base. Even though I disagree with you, I got to give you credit. You don't seem like you're coming from a biased viewpoint. So I'll give you credit for that.
I appreciate that very much. I do work really hard at trying to search for truth and acknowledge my own fallibility. And I think we need to approach life with a certain sense of humility, right? It's one of the virtues. And I don't really necessarily argue from virtue ethics until we get to the point of how do we determine what these moral facts are, which we never even got into that today. But I think that virtue ethics is a really good way to get there. I think that we can look at it from two different positions. I think we can take the secular Buddhist position and look for the middle way. The Four Noble Truths lead to the Eightfold Path, and that really helps us to understand what the middle way is. You can also look to it from Aristotelian golden mean, right? That perfect medium between excess and deficiency. That's where these virtues lie. So we can look at anything like courage, right? You have revenge and you have fear, or right. And so at this point, this is where courage actually lies. Or I'm sorry, I said revenge. I meant recklessness. So you have recklessness up here, you have fear down here. In the middle, we can find where this virtue lies. And I think that we can apply this to our lives, whether morality is objective or subjective. If I understand at a fundamental level that I can live my best life by making sure that my neighbor is living their best life and has everything they need. If my neighbor isn't going hungry, he's not likely to come steal my food. If my neighbor's not sick, he's not likely to come give me a disease, right? So on and so forth. So to live my best life, I benefit by helping my neighbor out. And I feel like if we did this on a global scale, not that we need global politics or global religion or global whatever else, but we do need this global sense of humanity, that I think that if cooperation was experienced on a global level, there would be no more wars. There would be no more fighting. There'd be no world hunger. We wouldn't be fucking up the planet and the environment and so on and so forth. So this is what I try to push for, and I try to live my life in this way. So thank you so much for recognizing that.
Yeah, one last thing. I just want to say, even though we disagree on this thing, I'm sure we agree politically, and that's maybe that matters more. So I appreciate you, and it's been a good debate. Thanks for everything.
Thank you, OE. And where did Vybe go?
He was getting some rain or something, so I think his.
I just saw it. For some reason that disappeared. Okay, all right. If you are watching over on the Raging Tomato on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, X, Insta, whatever, I am shutting all of those ends down, and we are moving over to the Gauntlet on YouTube. That is at the Gauntlet Debate on YouTube, at the Gauntlet Debate. You have to head there if you'd like to continue. Otherwise, we're going to shut that down. Okay. I do want to